What are the deepest, darkest secrets you've overheard in your Uber? I could go on for days with these, but this one takes the cake. It's not a secret, just one of many insane experiences. So, I picked up a guy in a suit at around 6 p.m. on Tuesday near Venice, California. He told me to take him downtown, and as per usual, I asked if he had a preferred route, and he said, "No, whatever's quickest." We get going, and the usual banter begins. "So, how long have you been driving for Uber?" I said, "A year or so. It's a great job." He says, "Oh, cool. Where do you stay at?" And I answer, "In the valley." And he says, "Oh, nice, nice. So, how long have you been driving for Uber?" I paused and kind of half smiled, thinking he's messing with me. He wasn't. So I answered verbatim, "1 year or so. It's a great job." He goes, "Oh, cool. Where do you stay at?" This repeated 3 more times before I finally answered it differently, saying, "I just started. It's not for me." And him replying, "Oh, cool. Where do you stay at?" I answered one last time the original way, but then finally silence. By this point, I was on the 10 highway, stuck in rush hour traffic. I look in my rear view and he's rubbing his head and hair profusely, like someone going through withdrawals. He took his suit jacket off and looked severely uncomfortable. I dialed 911 on my phone just in case stuff went down. Then out of nowhere, he yells in a deeper voice than earlier, "Frick!" And I said, "Sir, is everything alright?" And he goes, "Where are we?" I said, on the 10 headed downtown. Is that still okay?" And he goes, "Yes." At this point, by the graces of the universe, we ended up moving pretty quickly through the traffic. Then, right before we exit off the 10, 2 miles or so from his apartment, he yelled again, "Where are we?" I said, "Sir, we're almost to your house. Is that still okay?" And he goes, "Yes, that's fine." Once before we arrive, I pulled up to drop him off and he gathered his stuff, opened the door and looks back in at me before walking away and in the most genuine, kind way says, "Have a great night. Watch out for crazy people." I think of all the suggestions, substances do seem to be the most reasonable. Dementia is possible as well, but the way he was sweating and getting increasingly uncomfortable in the back seat makes me think that it was something artificial kicking in. Honestly, one of the strangest, creepiest events ever. Subsequently, I brought a taser, and luckily so, as this was just the beginning of several crazy incidents. So I'm glad I don't drive Uber anymore. You see, when the author here writes that he was lucky that he did in fact buy said weapon, that does make you wonder if he was lucky because he had to use it shortly afterwards. What ratings do you use on a customer that you had to stun? Or for that matter, a driver that stuns you? I have 2. The first was 2 girls talking about how they did the deed with the same guy. Both of them agreed his member was too big and he was hurting them by lasting too long. They both concluded that he was gay. The second was 2 middle-aged couples trying to agree to a menage a 4. Had a driver tell me he was changing his name to Nilrim because it was Merlin spelled backwards and he was a wizard. Once I had an extremely drunk middle-aged couple fight for an entire 30-minute ride. They attempted to bring me into their fight many times. I just pretended like I was deaf and didn't answer when they tried to rope me into it. I had an Iraqi driver tell me he was an engineer in Iraq before the first Gulf War, and that he'd developed a superior means of gilding furniture, chandeliers and stuff, which you can imagine was hot in pre-war Husseinville. Well, O'Day wanted to go into business with him, but, and this is a direct quote, "First, O'Day wants to be your partner in business, then he wants to be partner in your wife." Words to live by. I think I was the culprit in my story. I live in New York City and I had to call the self-deletion hotline while coming home in an Uber from work because it was the only place where I could more or less be alone. I was so thankful to the driver for being patient while I was crying and saying really effed up things. It was so obvious it was the last thing he wanted to deal with that night. My friend Ubers in my hometown, picked up some really nice girls on the first Friday. They're talking about their plans for the next autumn. He begins to think he recognizes one of them, turns out to be my younger sister, and he tells me about it. And that's how I found out my little sister was moving to Spain. Driving Uber one night, it was pretty tame up until I picked up 2 guys who wanted to go to an exotic dance club 40 miles away. As they requested an Uber Select fare, I was happy to drive that far, like $80 to $100. It took them 15 minutes to get ready and into the car, and they seemed cool, so I wasn't worried. As soon as we got on the freeway, the guy in the passenger seat started asking about Uber driving and things got dark. After a few minutes, he started saying stuff like, What would you do if someone just grabbed the steering wheel and ran the car into the median? And have you ever thought about what would happen if someone in the backseat tried to strangle you while you were driving? I got a little freaked out and tried to lighten the mood by asking what they were celebrating, but the one guy just kept at it. I was happy to get to the club and get the heck out of the car. The bonus was the bouncer at the club gave me a whopping $40 for dropping them off there. I never drove Uber again. F that. Once I had 2 girls and a guy declare their love for each other as friends and saying they should hang out more often when they got in the car. By the time I dropped them off, they hated each other and never wanted to speak again. My tongue was bleeding by the end of the ride from trying not to laugh my butt off. I cracked a few smiles, and I wonder if they ever noticed. They were fighting over the new football coach at the local uni. Former Uber driver here. I picked up a sweet girl from a bar on a Wednesday night, absolutely hammered at about 10 p.m. She got into my car, apologized for being so drunk, and politely asked if we could just drive around a little while with the windows down. I was prepping for a cleaning fee, trying to drive and pull a paper bag for her to hurl into out of the glove box, but no, she just did that airplane thing with one hand at the backseat window. She asked me if I ever thought about dying, to which I replied, yeah, I guess so. That's when she told me she had cancer. It was in her brain and it was too far gone to consider chemo. I remember my heart just pounding. She told me she was dying and she was going to be okay. Tonight she was celebrating with her work friends who threw her a going-away party. She told them she was taking a position abroad. I just didn't tell them that abroad was heaven. Jesus frickin' Christ. I turned off my app and cried all the way home. Picked up a girl mid-Saturday. She was a bit upset and a little teary and opened up to me. Turned out a business she'd started was failing and she was in debt and had turned to exotic dancing on the side to cover the bills. She said the pay was good, but she kept getting really sick from all the booze she felt obliged to drink. Part of her job was making guys spend money at the bar. She hated it and felt trapped and kept asking me what I'd do in her situation. I'm a guy, so kind of hard for me to answer. Tried to give her the best advice I could think of, like getting the tax office to withhold tax for a while, but couldn't help really. Only thing I could do was end the trip early. The other one was a couple of off-duty cops who didn't want their friends to know they were using Uber, because it was still a legal grey area here in 2016. Took this 19-year-old kid and what I assumed was his girlfriend back to her house on Pride weekend in San Francisco. They made out the whole ride. When I dropped them off, only she got out. He said, "Take me to Castro and 18th. I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, I only make out with girls when I'm rolling. Never a dull moment in San Francisco." So, this driver I know told me that he picked up his last fare for the day and it didn't have a final destination. The guy gets in the car, off his mind on white snow, yelling on the phone. The guy said, "Drive to Vegas, here," and tosses him $500. This is on top of the Uber fare, which apparently was surge pricing. So, the guy drives him to Vegas, from LA, which takes about 4 hours. The whole time, the guy was talking and yelling on the phone at his mum. They get to Vegas and he drops the guy off at some mansion where the mum was outside waiting to yell at him. Apparently, the guy forgot about giving him the cash because he tossed another few $100 at him, got out the car, and split. I picked up a guy from a gay bar and he was noticeably coming on to me while I drove. He then confessed that he was one of the founders of a very popular gaming company and offered me $2,000 to come up to his room. He also refused to leave my car unless I kissed his hand first. Fun times. Man, Gabe Newell is out of control these days. I kid, although I'm very curious as to which of the big names in gaming he was, if he was any of them, since all the ones I can think of are ostensibly straight and married men. Never overheard a juicy secret, but plenty of interesting people. One time I had a group of 3 guys, probably around my age, their mid-20s. They seemed nervous, avoided eye contact, and were pretty much silent from the moment they hopped in. I tried confirming the destination, asked how their night was going, but only got muffled mumbling in return. As always, I worked out the situation in my head in a rather calm, rational manner. Something like, are these guys trying to rob me? Jack my car? Did they just kill someone? Am I an accessory to murder? Do they have knowledge of the impending apocalypse? But as my paranoia routine wound down, I slowly started to realize what was going on. Between the beads of sweat, occasional jaw clenching, and finally random giggle outbursts, these kids were just frickin' tripping. Once it hit me, I called them out immediately and told them I was cool. They looked so relieved. I started blasting music, some Humphrey McGee, I do believe, so they just started geeking out by that point. It was a fun ride. At the end of the ride, the guy that sat up the front tossed me a bag of hallucinogenic fungi. Good times. It wasn't so much weird as it was random, but my first night driving for Uber, I picked up a dude at 2:30 a.m. that was finishing a pub crawl. The guy was dressed in a purple dinosaur onesie, and was hammered. He got in and started telling me his entire life story and how he came out to his parents and moved across the country the next day. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Picked up a girl who had to go to work across town. Her boyfriend and her were arguing in the parking lot as I was approaching. The girl gets in my car, and she's worried she's not going to get to work on time, and she'd be fired if she was late. Get to about a block away, and my phone rings. I answered and tried to get it off my Bluetooth stereo to no avail. The person on the other line was her boyfriend, and he said he wanted to apologize about his girlfriend and that I shouldn't listen to her because she was a crazy witch. She heard all of it and didn't say a thing. Very awkward. Finally get her to work, and she asks me to stay in the parking lot as she goes in and quits her job. She gets back a few minutes later and on the way home tells me that her boyfriend once broke her arm in an argument and that he was going to be really mad at her and she was worried about going back home, but to take her there anyway. I ended up dropping her off and calling non-emergency, but I have no clue if anything ever happened there. I had someone get in my car, told me he's in his late 20s and that he's doing the deed with the girl who just recently turned 18. I awkwardly told him, okay, good for you, and he proceeded to tell me that it's not, that his life sucks and everything he does to make himself happy doesn't work. He told me that he watches lots of vids of people self-deleting and he wishes he had the courage to go through with it himself. He told me he's going to go to San Francisco and spend every last penny he has on vacation and to just jump off the Golden Gate Bridge when he's done. I didn't really know what to say to that. When I dropped him off, I told him I hope things start looking up, and he just said, they won't, they never do, and left. He also asked weird questions like, if I hit you, would you kick my butt? When I said I'd rather no one hit anyone, he said, dude, you'd whoop my butt, I'm a frickin' piece of crap. I hope he got help. My friend Uber driver George is doing Uber pool one night in Austin where you pick up multiple people en route to the destination. First girl, number 1, gets in the car alone and sits in the back seat of the passenger side. Then a couple, a guy and a girl, come in and there's not enough room for everyone in the back, so girl number 2 sits behind the driver and guy sits up front. The 2 girls in the back start chatting and seem to be getting along well. Girl 1 asks what they're doing tonight and girl 2 says, oh, me and my boyfriend Josh are going out to celebrate. Josh works at XX and just got a promotion. At this point, George notices Josh is crouching down in his seat and looking guilty. Then girl 1 says, that's funny, my boyfriend's also named Josh and works at XX. I wonder if they know each other. Then girl 2 starts tapping her boyfriend on the shoulder, bugging him to turn around to meet girl 1. At some point, Josh can't avoid the interaction anymore and is forced to turn around. He does so with a look of utter horror on his face as it slowly dawns on both girls that they're dating the same Josh. Anyway, they both start screaming and they kick him out of the Uber. Not sure what happened after that, but you can bet that Josh never took Uber pool again. This was more of a dark situation than a dark secret. Driving around waiting for pings, and I get one at a popular bar. I pull up and a young woman flags me down, gives me her name, asks for mine, and I'm her ride. Easy enough. There's a guy with her, they're both quite drunk. She says goodnight to him and gets in the rear passenger side door. Homeboy is not having it. Decides he's coming with us. Starts trying to convince her, despite her saying she has work early and wants to get to sleep. But he's not taking no for an answer. It's getting a bit weird and he's getting more and more pushy and aggressive about it, to the point that she's clearly uncomfortable. I step out of the car and say over the top, hey man, if she says you're not getting in the car, you're not getting in the car. He looks over at me with hate in his eyes. I'm a bit tense, not knowing this kid's deal. He slams the door, walks away, talking crap as he does. And yeah, talking crap as you walk away. What a punk, right? Get back in the car. The girl seems a little more sober after the experience and is shaken up over it. I take her back home, make sure she gets in safe. Not as scary or weird as it could have been, but the guy gave off a bad vibe, and I'm glad he took the hint and effed off. 2 guys discussing how much fun they had at one of their bachelor parties. The fun consisted of, this is the most white snow I've ever done, and I can't believe I hired a working girl right before I got married. I was the passenger, this is my story. I got picked up at around 2:15 a.m. at the bars. An older man, white Volvo station wagon. It's a pretty long drive, so I figure I'll talk to this guy. I ask him what credentials you have to be an Uber driver. He said, background check and all that. Probably for the best, huh? Wouldn't want any nutballs driving people around. And then almost as if he didn't hear what I just said, he offered, yep, I'm an unspeakable act offender though. Don't worry though, you're not my type. Uh-huh? You know what I really like though? Philip Seymour Hoffman. He was a true legend. And he proceeded to talk about Philip Seymour Hoffman for 15 minutes straight. All the time with me just going, yep, he said as we got close to my house. Oh, I know that hill. I like to park there and watch girls walk home from school. As we pass my house, I say, yeah, just a few more blocks that way. Reported him to Uber. They said they'd look into it, and I never heard about it again. I think there's a significant chance he was messing with me, but I reported him anyway to err on the side of safety. Yeah, that's not a funny joke to make, and seriously, he couldn't have blamed you for reporting him if he were a rational person. But yeah, my money is on him being far from rational. Scary stuff. One time I was driving a guy for a bit of a long trip. It was going to take around 25 to 30 minutes. He wasn't hammered, but definitely a bit drunk. It was late and he must have been feeling a bit down, so he confided in me and asked me for some advice. He told me he's madly in love with his fiancée's best friend and he couldn't back out now. He's been with this girl for 4 years and engaged for 1. He was ready to be married in a few months. It was pretty sad to hear, because it wasn't just your average story. It was filled with a lot of subtle emotional and mental anguish. The guy went through about 5 years of ups and downs with this girl and found an innocent friend and comfort in the best friend. After a few years, he developed feelings and it was just downhill from there. I felt bad for the guy because he seemed like he was truly in love with his fiancée too, although he had strong feelings for this friend. He knew that going through with the marriage meant a lifetime of being around the friend and suppressing feelings, but also breaking it off meant that he lost the girl of his dreams. Seemed like a genuinely nice guy and I hope he's doing okay. Picked up 2 guys. They were talking about how they were going to keep hiding their relationship from their wives and children. Pretty messed up stuff. My mum does rides in San Diego, which is a city that loves its Navy, and is where future Navy SEALs go to BUDS, or Basic Underwater Demolition Training. My mum was telling me one time she gave a ride to a young man who was about 20 years old. He'd been fighting to become a SEAL his whole life and ended up falling asleep on the last day or 2 of BUDS and getting dropped for the season. He was just as crushed though because he'd made it through everything before and now he'd have to wait before being able to enroll again and would be starting from scratch. Anyway, during the ride he started to open up to my mum about his other passion, which was medicine, and she suggested that he chase that dream instead because he came off as a very caring and devoted person. At the end of the ride he asked her to step out of the car so he could give her a hug and a huge thanks for lending an ear and giving her an honest opinion about the situation. He also left her his phone number so that he could give her a call and let her know what he'd decided to do. A few days later, he gave her that call and said he'd returned back home to Texas and would start taking courses to pursue a career in medicine. I once drove some well-dressed Russians in between bars on the west side of Chicago. I used to work for a Russian-owned cab company and I do understand a little Russian. I heard 2 of them talking back and forth about something one of them was very anxious about. The phrases that jumped out at me were, "This is death, this is serious, blood is on me, and I'm not a bad man." The other guy was just mainly telling him to relax a lot and telling him, "There are no fools here," or something along those lines. Upon dropping them off, like an idiot, I temporarily blanked that I'd just heard parts of a seemingly harrowing conversation, and I said, "Dobroy noki," which means good night. One of them heard me, the older guy telling his colleague to relax, and he just stared at me. Then he came around to my window while reaching into his coat pocket, which scared me crapless. He then pulled out $100 and said in English, "My friend, do we understand?" I just took it, nodded my head in the affirmative, and drove off. I didn't take any rides for the rest of that night. Not so much secrets as they are things that people don't normally say or do in front of strangers. I picked up a divorced father whose buddy paid for his Lyft ride to the bar. Why? Because he was supposed to see his kid that evening for an overnight, but the wife had the authority to dictate the terms to him of seeing his own child no matter what, and she wasn't feeling it. Granted, I definitely got one side of the story, but it was frickin' terrible to see a man who desperately wanted to spend time with his kid be completely blocked from it over bullcrap. California had given dads so little rights, from how this guy described it, so that even though he had a stable job, good house, and was willing to pay for a hotel so he and his son would stay in the town the mum lived in, it was a no-go. That was a tough one because I was so powerless to help. The other one was where I picked up a girl to take her straight from work to the hospital to see her dad. Her mum had called her work to make her end her shift early because it was serious. Her dad had cancer. I dropped her off and was like, God, I hate this job because I'll never know how her night ended. I was wrong. Next night, I'm taking people home from bars and 2 guy friends took her out to get wasted because her dad had died. They were being drunken idiots, so when I took them to get pizza, she came outside and we talked about it a little. That was probably the one ride where I felt like I had a positive impact on someone's life beyond getting them home safely. Then there was the time I was taking 2 couples home. Dropped off couple number 1, and the husband of couple 2 was in the front seat and made a comment I didn't hear. Apparently, he insulted the wife of couple number 1, his wife's best friend. The wife in couple number 2 didn't like that, so she hit him. Not like a playful slap, she struck her husband. Straight on domestic attack. I laid down the law. We're not going anywhere if this is how it's going to be. The guy was drunk on tequila, the chick was pretty drunk too, so the ride home was him asking me, "How do you feel?" and me saying, "It's not about how I feel, you two need to discuss this tomorrow when you're sober." It's weird, man. You get a passing glimpse into people's lives and love it and hate it at the same time.
Reddit, what's the most messed up food your parents would make regularly when you were a kid? Get ready for a lot of cursed things in this post. My mom would mix cooked mac and cheese with applesauce in a bowl and give it to us. My mom was from the, quote, boil the ever-loving crap out of everything school of cooking. Carrots boiled to sad orangish lumps, broccoli steamed beyond any recognition. Corn may have started fresh, but by the time she was done with it, it resembled creamed corn but lacking any possible flavor or texture. Barbecue chicken? Boil that son of a gun completely before you blacken it on the grill, lest you and everyone you love die horrifically from salmonella. The things she would do to a steak are crimes against humanity. Combine all this with an 80s desire to avoid salt at all costs, and my dad's pathological fear of bad breath resulting in a blanket household ban on onions and garlic, and mealtime was a grayish, disappointing place. I now take cooking very seriously. When they were younger, my grandma and her siblings were forced to eat cream of mushroom soup sandwiches. Her dad would slice the soup like cranberry sauce and spread it across the bread. The thing is, listener, this is an example of two great things that don't go together. Cream of mushroom soup? My mom uses it to make tater tot casserole. It's very good. Adds a lot of richness, savoriness, and creaminess. Sandwiches? Can't go wrong with them. They're one of my favorite things to make. But a cream of mushroom soup sandwich? Are y'all out here drinking your sandwiches? My mom liked to make spaghetti. That's not weird, I hear you say. Let me mention that she made it with raisins. I already don't like this post, but we're gonna keep going. Like, get a pot of water boiling, throw in the noodles, and some raisins at the same time. No spaghetti sauce afterward, just cooked spaghetti and rehydrated raisins on a plate. She was very proud of this dish, and she didn't understand why we hated Mom's day to cook. Edit. Guys, I know a raisin is a dehydrated grape, but rehydrating it doesn't just turn it back into a grape. It turns it into some disgusting raisin juice bomb, which is even worse when warm. I'm really trying hard to understand the thought process that leads to a person deciding to cook spaghetti with raisins, but I'm drawing a blank. So, bear with me on this, but I have an explanation. Not a justification, but an explanation. On the island of Sicily, one of the regions of Italy, some meat dishes actually include raisins or golden raisins. For example, braciole. That's Braciole. It's a meat dish that's a roulade, which is a rolled and stuffed meat that contains stuff like cheese, herbs, and breadcrumbs. I've never had raisins with meat before, but if Italy is doing it, home of the best pizza and pasta in all of the world, I have no reason to judge them. Quote, asparagus salad, which consisted of 5 to 6 limp, cold pieces of canned asparagus served on a bed of iceberg lettuce with a glob of mayo on top. Yeah, there's no bearing with me on this one. This is just white people food. We were beyond poor, so many of my mother's creations were simply a matter of making do with what we had. That didn't make them any more palatable, though. The two most memorable: canned peas cooked in powdered milk and served over toast. She called it, quote, pea wiggle. We had it at least once a month. Canned spaghetti sauce and a slice of surplus cheese placed on a slice of bread and toasted in the oven. This was, quote, poor man's pizza. I actually loved this as a kid. Tried it again a few years ago and was less impressed. Not everything can be credited to a lack of money. She used to slice up kielbasa and steam it. The result was very much like styrofoam chips. This is a great time to mention the YouTube channel The Wolf Pit, the WOLFE Pit, all one word. It focuses on cooking on a really tight budget, so I highly recommend it if you're looking to eat cheap without having asparagus salad. My dad got into a phase of watching Emeril Lagasse, and it inspired him to try and be fancy. I'll never forget. He made these hamburger patties and put chunks of bread mixed in with the raw meat, but the bread just absorbed all the blood. They looked like huge, mushy, bloody warts hanging off the meat. It was absolutely repulsive looking. Okay, after reading that nightmare sentence, let me tell you why you should put bread in your meatballs. If you take some day-old bread, tear it up into chunks, and soak them in milk or preferably heavy cream, maybe throw in some seasonings into it, that's called a panade. When mixed into your meatballs, it actually helps retain moisture and prevents dry, sad meatballs. But don't just stick plain white bread into your burgers, that's just not going to work out well for anybody. My mom used to make a Vietnamese noodle dish called bun dieu, but didn't always have time to make it from scratch, so she often used a canned broth. I am allergic to peanuts, and every time she made this dish, I would complain to her that I didn't want to eat anymore because my lips were swelling up and I was itchy. She is having none of that sass, obviously, and makes me eat the whole bowl. Few years down the line, she decides to read the ingredients label on the back and just says, you should probably stop eating that. As was the custom in the 1950s to the 1980s, when my parents were coming of age, my parents only ate vegetables boiled and unseasoned. So, boiled carrots, boiled Brussels sprouts, etc. No salt, no pepper, no olive oil or butter. This led me to believe that vegetables are supposed to taste bad. Later in life, I discovered seared, roasted, caramelized, and seasoned vegetables, and those things are the bomb. Every day, I'm caramelizing or roasting a veggie. Mom would make frozen whitefish, baked in an oven until it was overcooked and just dehydrated, shrunken fillets of white fish. Then, she'd serve it with boiled cauliflower and white rice. White entree, white starch, white vegetable, all served on a white plate. What did we drink? Yeah, milk. White milk. My mom made, and still makes, a dish called cat heads. It's basically chicken with cream of celery, some vegetables, and a bit of stew inside 2 rolled-up crescent rolls. It looks exactly like a shaved, cooked cat's head, so she called it that and we have it every Christmas. This comment actually says, so basically mini chicken pot pies but shaped like cat heads? I would eat that, and I gotta say, I agree with that. I freaking demolish chicken pot pie every time I have it. They would wrap bologna around a banana, and that was my snack. I don't know where the idea came from. I freaking hated it. I just don't know, guys. I grew up to become allergic to bananas. My grandma made leftovers casserole while my mom was growing up. You take a bunch of cooked noodles, whatever leftovers seem appropriate, add a can of cream of something soup, throw a topping on it, and bake it till it's food. My mother hated it. She called it one-pot glop. Grandma made it at least once every time we visited, and I loved it. Once when I saw her cooking it, I cheered, "Yay, one-pot glop!" The look of betrayal on Grandma's face was very confusing. I made one-pot glop for breakfast this morning. Overcooked steak. Like leather tier overcooked. Grew up on a dairy farm, so beef was plentiful. But if we didn't choke down the shoe leather dinner, my mother would have a violent meltdown about how we were all ungrateful little jerks. My mom, God bless her, was not a very talented cook. She tried, but she just wasn't interested and didn't have the knack. At least I got a home-cooked meal most nights, so I can't complain. Mom used to buy these awful Polish sausages. She would take a few and throw them in a pot of water with a head of cabbage. Let everything boil for a while, and that was dinner. Mom called it, quote, bratwurst. I lived in fear of quote-unquote bratwurst my whole life until I was in college. There was a German festival and all of my friends were like, oh boy, let's go get some brats. I thought they were crazy. Then someone handed me a real brat on a bun with spicy mustard and sauerkraut, and I realized that I had been all wrong about the true nature of bratwurst. That was probably the best thing I learned in college. A dry ketchup sandwich. It was old stale bread that was broken in half for the 2 pieces of bread for a sandwich with ketchup in between them. No meat, no cheese, just ketchup. If we were lucky, the bread wasn't too stale and the taste kinda resembled French fries. This one just makes me sad. Like, not even in a pity way or oh, I can't believe that she would do that, she's so disgusting. This just sounds like a depression meal or a meal you would make if you were like in the negatives in your bank account. My mom loved making pork chops, but she cooked the heck out of them, so it was like eating rubber. We ended up calling the dinner Shake and Incinerate. My grandfather used to buy tubs of fish eyes, and he would put them in all kinds of things. My scrambled eggs used to stare up at me. Not something they made regularly, made once, reheated leftovers for ages, but we ate it a lot for a while. My mom made what we came to call, quote, pepper soup. It initially was an accident. She was making a small batch of soup for dinner, and while shaking some black pepper in, the lid fell off and the entire container of pepper emptied itself into the soup. She scooped out what she could, but in the end, it was still way too peppery to eat. Ended up enlarging the batch of soup into 2 large canning pots, each about 5 gallons, before it was at a tolerable level. Us kids still found it way too peppery. Anyways, we ate that soup what seemed like every day for a couple months. We grew up dirt poor and relied heavily on the area's soup kitchens and food pantries. There were 5 of us kids with a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was unemployed for a few years, so we rarely could afford basic things like fruit. To keep us healthy, my dad would regularly fill an empty skim milk jug with water and add powdered milk plus powdered vitamin tablets, the type with the capsule, and shake it up, then put it in the fridge. We never really knew whether we were drinking actual milk or the vile false milk until we tasted it, since skim milk has the same appearance. To this day, my dad maintains that doing what he did kept us all healthy, as none of us got sick during his unemployment. I mean, geez, you gotta do what you gotta do. Props to that dad. My stepdad and mom used to make, quote, grilled cheese for lunch every weekend. Now, that's not so bad, right? Wrong. Bread with the knockoff Kraft processed cheese, microwaved for 2 to 5 minutes. No butter, no toast. Just soggy bread and burnt plastic cheese, if only in for 2 minutes. If it was cooked for 5 minutes, the bread would be rock hard and molten plastic. My parents have become great cooks now, but when my sister and I were kids, she was a total brat and a picky eater, so we'd wind up with plain, unseasoned chicken breasts and steamed broccoli and plain white rice way too often. And I wasn't allowed to put salt on it because salt was bad for me. And I guess it didn't occur to them to provide any condiment or something to give that crap some flavor. Okay, this isn't the first time I've heard of people's parents thinking salt is toxic, but one of my cousins is about the same age as my mom, and she is a salt fiend. We were at a Mexican restaurant one time, and she was shaking salt onto every single nacho she ate. She couldn't get enough. She wanted to be one with the salt. I swear if she ingested any more salt, she would have become a CSGO player mixed with a League of Legends streamer. I genuinely worry about the life expectancy of this woman. My mother makes this thing me and my brother can only refer to as compost salad. It starts on a skillet where she scrambles some eggs. Then, she adds 3 cups of kale and steams it, oftentimes burning the eggs in the process and releasing a vaguely fart-like scent into the atmosphere. Then, things get weird. She adds an entire can of kidney beans, bean water and all, mashing them into the eggy kale. She then adds cinnamon, nutmeg, curry powder, garlic powder, and salsa and Tabasco sauce. At this point, the smell is so nauseating it's nearly impossible to be in the same room as this abomination of a dish. After it's done being heated into mush, she puts it on a plate and adds vanilla yogurt on top. Looks like it was fished straight out of the trash. Needless to say, I refuse to let her make me food. And by the way, I really have no idea what's wrong with her, but something is definitely up if she thinks that this is an acceptable meal. Let me preface this by saying that my mother is in no way Hispanic. She is one of the whitest people I know. She grew up mainly in Central Florida and the upper Midwest, rarely if at all coming into contact with Latin American culture except at the occasional restaurant. Despite this, she would routinely make, quote, arroz con pollo for dinner. This consisted of chicken, cooked until it was tough and chewy to ensure it was, quote, cooked through, and rolled in flavorless breadcrumbs from a can, served with a side of mealy, aggressively under-seasoned rice. Did I mention that there was almost no salt in any of this because salt was, quote, unhealthy? It was so unpleasant that I threw it right back up a few times, once even at the table. Somehow, she still wonders why I barely eat anything when I'm home for Thanksgiving. It amazes me how many of these posts mention a lack of salt. Your body needs salt. We specifically used iodized salt because a lack of iodine is one of the leading causes of preventable developmental problems in children. Pork in cider sauce. The cider in question was cheap as dirt White Lightning, the only time we actually bought it, I like to point out, and me and my sister hated it. We don't want this. Can we have something else? You ate it last time, so you must like it, so be quiet and eat it. We really don't like it. Tough. You'll eat what you're given or go hungry. My mom was awesome as we were growing up, and in all fairness, we did eat most of the things that we were given anyway, as she was a fantastic cook. But this was an abomination, beaten only by liver and onions. She stopped making it when I went to school hungry. I'd gotten up too late to eat breakfast, and the school phoned her up to express their concern and make sure there was nothing happening at home. As an American reading this, it grossed me out thinking of cooking pork in White Lightning. In America, that is usually home-distilled alcohol or moonshine. However, in the South, pork barbecue usually has a vinegar, cider-based sauce on it, and it's super tasty, so I could see where your mom was going with this. Yeah, but the only thing that was missing was the rest of the sauce! My grandma is an awful cook. She hates doing it, and you can definitely tell by the stuff she comes up with. Here's a few examples. Instant mashed potatoes with mayonnaise. Gag. Quote, peach cobbler, which was flour, peaches, and syrup. Fried chicken cooked long enough to burn it completely. Salt was the only seasoning she ever used. Spaghetti. No flavor. Just ground beef, never drained by the way, generic pasta sauce, and noodles. She got mad when I started using barbecue sauce to mask the nasty crap she made. Man, I put it in mashed potatoes, macaroni, rice, and meat. My mom was/is seriously the worst cook. The only time I ever ate anything good was when we had weekends with my dad and he took us to restaurants and let us order whatever we wanted. For a kid, I could eat a heck of a lot of lobster. My mom made these disgusting casseroles with fried Spam, Velveeta mac, and canned peas. Then it was topped off with those Kraft single slices and crushed up barbecue potato chips. She thought that was the ultimate in cooking. I still feel sick when I think about it. Sometimes for dinner, we would have chipped beef on toast, which is a disgusting, salty, Great Depression kind of food. And if it wasn't chipped beef, it was some kind of soup/tuna mixture over toast. If it came in a can, we probably ate it. This is probably why I taught myself how to cook. I went back home to visit last year, and I cooked dinner every night because I saw my mom pulling out the Spam and Velveeta, and there was no way I was going to let that happen. My dad didn't want me to leave after the 4th salted caramel apple pie I made. Not my parents, but growing up, I loved my grandmother's cooking. In retrospect, some of it was kind of weird. Her parents emigrated from Japan to Hawaii shortly after the turn of the century, and she'd have been about 7 when the Great Depression started. Combine that with World War II and frequent shipping issues, and she wound up with a lot of unusual culinary habits. Little Japanese lady, maybe 4'9" and 80 pounds on a good day, making spaghetti and adding corn. Her meatloaf had canned clams in it. I really love that one. Vienna sausages and Spam stewed in a sweet soy sauce broth, raw broccoli and sliced kamaboko fish cake sandwiches with lettuce, cucumber, and mayo, also pretty good actually. Cubes of raw tofu tossed with canned tuna, soy sauce, onions, and some other things. Growing up in Hawaii, I didn't think anything of it. If seaweed and raw fish are part of the regular menu, none of that stuff's any weirder. Anyway, she made all of that stuff for her family, plus more traditional items like maki sushi, mochiko chicken, and other delicious things. For herself though, she'd maybe have a few cubes of tofu, a bowl of miso soup, and some rice. She loved dessert and sweets, but even then, she'd take a piece of chocolate and cut it into fourths. I last saw her in 2010, when she must have been about 88. She had her good days and her bad days, but she didn't cook anymore. She passed away in 2014. I miss her. I'm gonna get gushy for a bit. I think this is one of the greatest things about cooking and food in general. Taste is one of the most powerful senses we have because it's the most intimate. Think about it. You're putting something inside your body that's going to end up everywhere else inside your body. When you eat something, you remember how it tastes. You have a vast memory of tastes, and those tastes remind you of memories. You ever hear the phrase, just like grandma used to make? That's because if you grew up on grandma's cooking, you have that, for lack of a better term, flavor connection. It's why some people cry when they have certain foods. It reminds them of home, or a loved one, or a precious memory. It's like that scene in Ratatouille when Ego has that dish Remy makes. It's not that it's made perfectly. It's made lovingly. Reddit, what did your crush do that absolutely killed your interest? This was in college. We were acquaintances and had a few classes together. He was cute, funny, and I totally had a crush on him. He asked me out to dinner and a movie. At the restaurant, he ordered the most expensive things on the menu: appetizers, drinks, lobster, and even dessert. When the bill came, he said, "You got this, right?" I was so embarrassed, I paid. Then I said I'd skip the movie because I wasn't feeling well, and he asked me to give him $20 for gas and for wasting his time. I didn't and just left. Ugh. After that, he couldn't seem to understand why I didn't want to go out with him again. I was giving her a place to sleep when she was feuding with her mother. After weeks of picking up after her, I dared to complain. She had a screaming fit, picked up her crap, and left. I was glad to be rid of her until later it got around to me that she was telling people on Facebook that I kicked her out for refusing to give me head. There's a lot I can forgive, but that was the first time I had ever had anyone just straight up make stuff up about me. Screw you, A. Her. Why are you leaving a tip? Me. Because the service was really good? Her. But she's fat. Bragged about drinking and driving. He told me that he and his friends have a, quote, nothing under 100 club, where they drink and then drive on the interstate going 100+ miles per hour and have to send a full-length Snapchat video of the speedometer to each other. 2 of my friends have been killed by a drunk driver 3 months prior. Well, I know someone whose tires are getting slashed. We went to Disneyland, where I had an annual pass with my friends and family for an event called Dapper Day, where you dress up in dapper clothing so everything looks very old-timey. I had done it for years with my friends, and he wanted to come, and my mom and siblings were going for the first time too. I was really excited, as it was the first time he had ever met my family. Well, we went on one ride with my family and my friends, and then he said, "Do you want to go on a ride? Just me and you?" I thought we'd come back and spend the rest of the day with them, but as soon as we were out of earshot, he was complaining about my family and how weird it was that they were there, and he wanted to do Disney with just me. But he had known they were coming, so I was confused. Then we went on one more ride, and he started complaining about how hot it was, how tired he was, and before lunch, he wanted to go home. I was super upset, but didn't want him leaving on his own, so I just went with him. But on the way home, I wished I had just let him leave and I could have stayed with all the people I loved. It was the first time in years my sister and my mom had been to Disney, and I didn't know it then, but it was the last time I got to go with my brothers before they grew up, and now they hate me. He was just some dude I dated, not a boyfriend or anything that lasted very long. I'm still so mad at myself for letting him ruin my day. But yeah, it absolutely killed anything I felt for him, and we broke up a few days later. Revealed his list of conquests. Not even my brother knows how many women I've slept with. Then he offered to take my virginity in the back of his pickup truck. I passed. I'm black, she's black, our crush was mutual. Then she found out I was once in a relationship with a white woman. She then jumped down a rabbit's hole of my, quote, betrayal of the black family and some other nonsense of my trauma of self-hatred. Never been turned off by anything faster than that. We were in the process of getting together. She had called over and we spent an afternoon watching movies and sitting close together. By about 8 in the evening, she was considering staying later, and I was casually encouraging her. She asked if she could take a shower, and I was like, yeah, sure, of course. Glad that the bathroom was clean and tidy and I had fresh towels. Anyway, about 4 minutes later, she calls me saying she needs help with the shower, and I give her a moment to get a towel around herself and knock on the bathroom door. She opens it completely naked and shows me that she's having trouble with the shower controls. So I'm kinda unsure whether to make the move or start with the controls. So I go with the flow and show her this is hot and cold, this is pressure, this is rainforest, and this is power jets. In the 5 seconds it takes me to do this, she is sat on the toilet. which is kinda a weird thing because I need to be able to make the next move, and she's sitting on the toilet, naked, with the lid up, looking all disinterested. I'm thinking, I've screwed it up, when suddenly, kersplosh, and she takes a dump right in front of me. And then another one. I was just like, I'll leave you to it. She asked if things didn't work out if I would mind if she went out with my roommate. I said I couldn't possibly do that to him and left. He tried to discreetly take photos of my feet. Nothing against people who are into that, but the way he was going about it was super creepy. She asked me if I was good with kids because she was pregnant with her ex and that she's not good with kids. It was the first date. We were teenagers, he lived in a different province, and we used to chat on Skype. He wanted me to think he was cool or something and would always talk about his drug use. He ended up faking a heroin overdose when we were on chat together. I was hysterically crying and freaking out, thinking I was watching someone dying and was trying to figure out how to call 911 in another province when he, quote, snapped out of it and told me that he was actually okay. I didn't talk to him much after that. She said I, quote, smile too much. Screw you, I smile when I want to. I try to find joy. Kept arranging times to talk and whatnot, then always forgot or was not available. Oh god, as someone with ADHD, I really felt this one. I'm so worried this is going to happen to me one day. I tend to struggle with planning things if I want to participate in several social events, so I have to tell people in the current social event that I'll be going to another social event after I'm done with this one. Time for 3 back-to-back ones. Bullied the quiet kid in our class. Turned out to be the person eating everyone else's food from the break room fridge. Kissed me, and then, after he pulled away, told me he has a girlfriend. His sister actually approached me and let me know that he was once arrested for locking their other pregnant sister in their basement, went on a coke binge while she desperately tried to get out, and went outside to beat their unsuspecting neighbor's van with a golf club. That was a big ol' nope. This post is the equivalent of thinking, there's no way this is gonna get worse, and then it does. Yeah, I don't get washing. I just don't really like taking a shower or a bath or anything. Had a crush on this girl back in high school. She seemed like a sweet girl. After she rejected me, I let it go, but was still interested in maintaining some sort of friendship. Found out she was actually pretty toxic behind my back. She made fun of me for a lot of things that really didn't matter, like hand motions while talking, and I just lost interest in her entirely, even in a friendship. This was years ago on a first date. Tried to convince me to quit my job and put all my savings into gold bars, then demanded I let him read my tarot cards to see if we'd be a good fit. Nope, nope, nope. Huge crush on a fellow uni student. I was invited over for what I expected to be a platonic study date, but hey, any time spent is better than just being alone, or so I thought. Got there and found another student from class also. Okay, study group? Turns out her mom and her set us up for a full-press MLM pitch. Video, literature, the works. I stayed a bit not to be rude, excused myself shortly, and only talked to her in class just in passing from then on. Huge letdown. Edit, MLM means multi-level marketing, aka a pyramid scheme. Signing up to both buy and sell something, while recruiting others to sell also. You get a % of all your other recruit sales also. All the percentages basically flow upward, so the only way to make any significant money is to be high in the tree, towards the top of the pyramid. It's all bullcrap basically. Told me he was only being nice to me because he was interested in a friend of mine. I see his Facebook post now. He is dumber than a box of rocks on a treadmill. Talked non-stop about himself and his accomplishments and never asked me one question about myself. She slept with my dad. She got blackout drunk at a party and violently crapped her pants. The smell alone completely turned me off of any interest I had. When I was a teenager, we worked together as lifeguards. I adored him so much until one day he just starts talking about this random woman that he didn't know and wasn't even there, that was wearing shorts. He said he was fine until she sat down and had some cellulite on her thighs. And he kept being angry and talking about how she should be doing squats to be more appealing. Like, his rant was angry and long and no one was adding to his conversation. Just silence. After that, I took off my rose-colored glasses and saw that he was, in fact, a huge douchebag. I'm kind of grateful he showed himself that way, because I was really into him until then. Could have been a bad time for my teenage brain. We worked together, and as I got to know him more, I learned he talked badly about everyone. Nurses that are amazing, he'd belittle. Talk about how certain people don't know what they're doing because they've asked for an ultrasound IV as they were struggling getting a vein on a heroin addict. The paramedics were worthless, doctors don't know what they're doing, who he thought was hooking up, and it completely turned me off. He's in his early 40s and into gossip more than my teenage daughter. He picked me up for our first date and his car was disgusting. Not talking a few trash items, the entire back seat and floorboard was completely covered in piled up trash, even up front. I had to step on empty McDonald's bags, old soda bottles, wrappers, etc. to even get in. And all he said was, just move it around with your foot. No sorry or anything. Made me feel like trash too. Like, dang, couldn't even clean up a little? Dumped me after 9 months because she wasn't ready for a serious relationship. Got into a relationship the next day and was married within 5 months. Told me that she didn't like me back anymore, but maybe if I waited long enough, she would like me like that again. Edit, she told me that I had gotten more critical lately and I, quote, changed. So she wanted me to change back before she would be with me. Too critical about every word I uttered under the name of sarcasm. Light the back fence of the school on fire to, quote, impress a mate. Edit, should add that he did it whilst high. Basically shut me down and made it clear to me that I was being the typical nice guy cliche. This is back when I was about 20. After a couple days of sulking, I started examining my behavior and realized she was absolutely right. Glad it happened. My ideas of how a relationship should work were entirely twisted at the time. I got my stuff together shortly after, addressed my stupid and entitled behavior, worked on myself, mentally and physically, and eventually met an amazing woman who is now my wife. Scary to look back and think of how close I got to becoming one of those incel neckbeard types. I'll kiss you, but I'd never date you. Told me he liked dating broken girls so he could fix them. See you later, hard-on. Talked smack about every woman in his life. Should have seen the red flags earlier. Didn't realize until later that he probably did the same to me. Apparently, having an opinion about anything and speaking for yourself isn't a very ladylike thing to do. I was a midnight clerk at a truck stop, and a very, very good-looking man came in every night on his run to visit with me. He wore an ankle monitor for probation/parole. I asked about it, and he told me he was falsely accused of kissing his ex-wife's daughter. She was 13. I took his word. He seemed to be a real good guy. About 2 weeks later, we were bullcrapping and flirting, and a little girl about 12 years old came in with her dad. He looked that little girl up and down like a pervert. I was instantly sick to my stomach. She invited me over to her place, not as a date thing, but just to hang out as friends. Her house was absolutely filthy, and the glass of Coke she gave me had a hair in it. She was really cute and had a great personality and was genuinely a nice person, but as soon as I saw cat crap on the floor near the front door and just dirty everything, my crush disappeared and I left in a hurry. Well, it turns out he wasn't interested in girls, so I knew I had to kill my feelings or feel stupid for keeping them. Said she was starting up a group for LGBT youth. I asked her why, and then realized I had been barking up the wrong tree. Attempted to get through a horror movie together, and he kept letting the movie run, then rewinding the movie so that the horror never came. He pretended to be scared and would whine about the, quote, scare that was coming. I guess he thought this was a cute gesture and would refuse to continue. It dragged a 5-minute scene into a 45-minute production of his, oh no, but I'm scared, no, I don't want to, this is terrifying. This was a guy who told me that he loved horror movies. He was full of really weird contradictions, but this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Edit, holy cow, this really blew up. Thanks for confirming I'm not insane for being annoyed with his actions. Thanks for the comments. A lot of them were hilarious. There were a lot of questions, so I'll try to answer some of them. What was the movie? It was an older J-horror movie called Kuchisake Onna. I think the English title was something like The Carved Mouth Woman. You mentioned he fast-forwarded. Do you mean rewound? Nope, I do mean fast-forwarded. He would rewind, then fast-forward to get to the beginning of the scene, and then pause it and whine about how it was going to be scary. He would also study the pause scene and look at clues to determine what the scare was going to be. Did you comfort/hug him? It was maybe the second time we'd hung out together, so even though I was interested in him, it was too early to say we were dating, and I was pretty shy and kind of reserved, so no hugging would have happened even if it had all gone well. What were you doing during the 45 minutes? I remember thinking, is he for real? Then thought that somehow maybe he was trying to tease me. He's a man of a lot of contradictions. So I played along for a while. By the time 15 minutes passed, I'm sure I was sighing audibly. I suggested that we stop and maybe watch something else. He refused. Close to the 30-minute mark, I think I snapped and said words to the effect of, "Come on, it's probably not that bad. Let's just finish. Go through with it and continue the movie. Don't waste time." He laughed and kept up the one-man show of, "I'm a sensitive man and I'm not afraid to show it." I gave up and just started looking through my phone because this was such a waste of time. And finally, I think he realized he'd gone too far and let the scene play out. Did you end up finishing the scene? Nope, because he tried the same thing at the next scary part and I made my excuses and got out of there. Was he a child? Nope, fully grown male of legal age. Why didn't you just stab him? I considered it, but I wasn't carrying my Dexter kill room equipment and the blood would have been too messy. Just kidding. He was tall and I'm pretty short. Probably wouldn't have ended well for me. Did you let him know why you didn't want to see him again? Nope. I never told him that this was the defining moment in which I lost interest. He was also kind of controlling and had a number of really weird quirks that I won't bore my fellow Redditors with. Basically, we just didn't talk as much after that, and that was that. Dude was the perfect epitome of the term douchebag. He used to be nice to people only to gain their trust and then betray them. He was attractive though, and a smooth talker as well. We started talking, became friends, and I developed a crush on him. Unfortunately, I never knew then what type of double-headed snake he was. Then, on one day, I witnessed him throwing his best friend under the bus just to save his reputation. Completely lost interest, cut ties with him, and he gave no craps about it. Only then did I realize how toxic people can be sometimes. Started gaming with him and learned that he threw tantrums worthy of a toddler when losing matches. She physically shushed me in a group with her finger on my lips while I was singing along with my friends to a cover band. She ate a live snail. I was in 6th grade. She detested cats and insisted that I give up my furry buddy before she'd move in with me. It wasn't that she was allergic to cats. She issued the ultimatum because, according to her, my cat, quote, received too much of my time and affection and she wasn't going to compete. We played Monopoly. That game brings out the absolute worst in people. Overheard her insulting my hobbies, clothes, hairstyle, personality, etc. with their friends. Now, I was never Prince Charming, but man, that hurt. He didn't believe in dinosaurs. One of those super religious types, and someone got into a conversation with him about dinosaurs, and he was absolutely convinced that, quote, dinosaur bones were put there by the devil to trick us. As a firm lover of dinosaurs, as soon as I heard that, any and all attraction disappeared. Bouncer at a bar I used to go to. I had a mad crush on him, and he was beautiful. He was a bit of a tart. Every night, some starry-eyed, equally beautiful woman would leave with him. Being a bit of a tart was not a deal-breaker for me. I was too back then, if not as successful as him as I'm not a super pretty girl. But one night, I guess he left crap too late. The hot girls were gone, and he informed me that he was willing to take me home that night. No. Nothing less sexy than, "That'll do, pig." Being treated like a sure thing, and of course the answer is going to be yes, because how would someone like me turn down someone like him? Being rude to the waiter and complaining that food is taking too long during dinner rush hour. I worked in the industry for a year. It's not easy when being slammed during rush. Started dating my best friend after flirting heavily with me for a week. She offered to drive and pick me up in her car because we had plans to go out to dinner and get to know each other better. I realized after about 20 minutes she was not driving to the restaurant and instead stopped at a gas station to get into someone else's car and buy drugs. Basically made me an accessory to a drug deal under false pretenses. My 18-year-old self thought it would be cute to invite him to a Christmas parade, but this dude had the audacity to ask me why I thought he would ever be interested in someone like me. Girl in car behind him honked when the light turned green. He got out of the car and began screaming and banging on our windshield. That's when I knew he was a psycho and I needed to get out of that relationship. Took me a destroyed home and 2 restraining orders later, but we've been broken up for 3 years now. She brought a friend to dinner with us, which was okay, I didn't mind. Then they both shoplifted afterward while I was on the other side of the store. Told her I didn't date thieves and she broke down apologizing. Chewed with her mouth open on our first date. I never thought something like that could kill my interest so rapidly. People who have signed non-disclosure agreements that have now expired or for whatever reason are no longer valid. What couldn't you tell us but now can? House Hunters guest checking in. I never made the show because I didn't close on the house. 1. I had to have a house under contract before going on the show. 2. They would select the other houses we were, quote, interested in. 3. I was assigned another significant other who was more, quote, interesting than my actual SO. That someone was making a wristwatch with 2 faces so you could set one to local time and one to the time you're from, for international travelers. My boss almost immediately broke it and had to pay. I was a model for a few big-name/well-known makeup companies. I did several print ads for magazines and a few television commercials. The makeup artists do use the product advertised, but minimally. Like that mascara they're touting? It's over really good fake eyelashes, and they also used another brand of mascara along with the one they're trying to sell you. Also, the clothes in the ads you see are pinned to high heaven on the model. They fit nothing like they look. It's not you. It's not your body. It's fake advertising. Most of us models look just like you, wearing all that crap without the pins and tucks and double-sided tape. Did some work on the trading floor at Goldman Sachs. I had access to all trading accounts and transactions. Came across some shady-looking accounts which did not meet policy. It did not use clearly identifiable name, and I could not find records of creation or testing for it, etc. I asked my supervisor if I should look into this. He turned to me and said, "We don't ask about those accounts. Just ignore them." Orders from the top. Trading account creation is a long and detailed process that requires formal approval from multiple lines of management. These accounts circumvented all that and were basically anonymous with no trace. They were also trading high volume, and I was told to accept and ignore them. A friend of mine got a job at a prominent local distillery that makes an extremely popular flavored whiskey. They literally buy whiskey from a third-party distillery and dump Tarani flavoring syrup into it. One of my friend's brothers was on the MTV show Room Raiders. Everything in the show is staged. All of the items that they would find were planted. At the end of the show, the prize was not a date with the girl that he, quote, picked, he just got her phone number. Saw the new Ferrari hybrid tech by employee error and couldn't speak or mention it until today, as they launched a new hybrid model. I can now tell you that Ferrari intends to have a car with 3 hybrid motors, and that's pretty much it. Amazon made me sign one when I worked with a company that painted their airplanes before the public knew they had them. I did the FAA paperwork. I was literally only one of like 7 people to see their airplane fully purple with their logo on it. I was actually taken off the project for a day because they thought I lied about not having a Facebook. They meant business. I signed an NDA once when I was an extra on, quote, Mortal Engines. If you watch the movie, you'll learn more than what I did on set. Posted this before if it sounds familiar. Not me, but a guy I know was on Cash Cab. A lot of it was faked. He was told he will be on a travel food show and would get picked up by a fake taxi at a certain location at a certain time. There were camera crews all over outside the taxi, and there's no way on earth you might mistake it for a real cab. Previous pharmacy chain I worked for, always at risk of robbery for opiates, and we were always taught to give the robber what they want with no questions asked. Have heard of times that pharmacists instead gave bottles of Oxy with Tylenol in it instead, and other things that were reckless and dangerous due to possible retaliation when and if they figure out they have been duped. New policy in NDA comes out where specific opiates were placed in a safe with GPS tracker and charger, so when it is removed from radius of origin, it issues remote notification to third party that tracks location and works with local LEO to find the wanted party. I worked for a native casino. The golf courses lost a ton of money for us, as did the advertising for the courses. Food we generally broke even on because of all the comps. If a crime was committed by a dealer, they would watch the dealer for 3 months to see if there were accomplices. They used facial recognition and would pair match you, so if the same person sat with the same dealer over and over, they would know. This way, they could look for accomplices. Then, when they busted you, they would sit you down and make you watch a video of you breaking the law. They did this because they wanted you to plead guilty as opposed to an expensive trial. I had to sign an NDA because I was part of a test screening for The Dark Tower with Idris Elba. Tried to tell them it sucked. They didn't want to listen. We used an extract to flavor our peanut butter porter. Oh, God, it feels good to get that off my chest. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like Am I the Genius, you'll probably love Am I the Jerk, link down below. I signed an NDA to waitress at a local family-owned restaurant. The owner was nuts, definitely had a severe personality disorder, and was worried about his recipes getting leaked. The restaurant is dead now, and his secret recipes consisted almost solely of frozen packaged food. Edit, guys, stop trying to guess what restaurant it is. You never will. There are millions of family-owned places with crazy bosses that go under. You don't know the place, and I'm not going to tell you. Also, Mr. Krabs pays his employees enough to own houses and pets. I wish I worked for him. Signed an NDA when I worked as a fit model for Katy Perry's shoe line. Basically, a fit model is used for their good proportions to test out the fit of garments. I'm a solid size 7.5, so hooray for being average. I was hired on 2 occasions and got to hang out and give her my opinion on the fit, feeling, and comfort of different shoes. Didn't think she'd actually be there, but both times she was present and totally running the show. Super nice woman in person and remembered me when we met again. Also, she apologized for making me wait so long, which I thought was nice. It was a late night meeting as she just wrapped shooting a music video. Her dog is really cute too, and I got to save it when it got stuck behind a wall panel. Recycling company would throw away a lot of stuff. They collected the money from government subsidies while leaving the employees to a crap salary in a hazardous workplace. R/OSHA would have freaked out. That included having dirty syringes, thank God I didn't get stabbed by one, where people would sort the materials. It was awful. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition had an amazing online character builder that made character creation a breeze. It listed all of the possible skills per race and class that was intuitive and made theory crafting for characters easy. Personal conjecture? They canned it because it took away from the pen and paper aspect of the game, and they were afraid with an online tool it'd take away from book sales. Worked for a short time as a quality assurance tester at EA and wasn't allowed to talk about the game I was testing. The console port for The Sims 4. There wasn't really much to talk about, but since the first few versions were basically just running the PC version on a console, there were a lot of bugs with it. One of the worst was a lighting bug we started referring to as disco mode, since it caused a bunch of multicolored squares to show up on everything at night or in dark areas. In 1990, I signed an NDA at Chili's when they showed me how to make their new Awesome Blossom. No other restaurant in town had anything like it, and it was hugely popular at the time. Worked at a matchmaking company. It's all bullcrap. It's just throwing darts at a wall until something sticks. There's no science or magic to it at all. Edit, I didn't work for an internet matching company, so they may have a different process. What we did was get a paid client and set them up on dates. The dates we found were from a pool of women, and we would just keep picking one after another. I quit because I felt like the women were just being used, and I became uncomfortable profiting off people's hopes. They very much play up on finding you true love and it's a process, blah blah. They'll very much play up on the fairy tale romance. It did change me. I don't really date anymore because I don't trust the true intentions of people anymore. I became very jaded to dating after all of that. Kraft Macaroni and Cheese are coming out with the more, quote, modern and upscale version to expand their market from lower income folks to higher income folks. It is almost entirely the same product as the 69-cent blue box, but will have a lighter, less orangey color that will be sold as shells and not macaroni. The box will be shaped differently, and it will go for $2.50 or more. Stated to be released by 1995. A certain global conferencing company still saves passwords for their web products in plain text. Any, and I mean any, employee that works there can see the password. My password there was not my pass, you idiot, because I know other people would see it eventually, and they'd even comment/laugh about it. Also, we once discovered that our main conferencing software was letting you sign in regardless of the password you entered, meaning you could sign in with any email address. Once we brought it up, we were first immediately stonewalled and told not to say anything about it in written format. TLDR, they had the dev team and legal on a conference call and they decided it was best to just keep it quiet until they fixed it later that day. No client was to be notified of the issue. And the ones that knew of it were basically given a runaround until they gave up. They also added call spoofing to the software. They called it something fancier, but it was call spoofing. You could make a call and make it appear from any number you wanted. My team raised this concern many times, but were countered with, quote, "No one will actually use it for that." Okay. That place was a goldmine of security risks. There was going to be a Capri Sun sports flavor in roughly 2003. I was a taste tester for Kraft Foods when I was 10. We didn't sign an NDA, but it was supposed to be a secret. Sony got hacked over that North Korea movie because of a 5-year-old account they didn't delete or monitor from an ex-employee. Mini Cooper/BMW replaced our car because the high-pressure fuel pump failed 6 times within 6 months. However, the recorded reason for the replacement of the car was because of, quote, "stained interior from dirty mechanic hands," so it wasn't replaced via the Lemon Law. A government in 1972 identified a terrorist by his wife's breasts from satellite images. That's no moon. That's a space station. I was a translator, contractor, for the US military. I also translated Marvel comic books. Marvel had tighter security. Google doesn't hire direct support employees. They open small projects in the US, then hire up to 250 contract employees of varying support positions for the project. Once they get the stats needed to run everything efficiently, they have mass layoffs and outsource their jobs to a country, Philippines/India, that's willing to accept much less than the US counterpart. At the same time, Google rakes in a huge tax cut because they're, quote, "creating jobs in the local communities." Edit, yes, this includes YouTube and YouTube content review. I was actually an actor in that commercial that said I wasn't. When I was a kid, I visited the dentist for a cavity. While there, the dentist slipped while drilling my tooth and drilled a hole under my tongue. My mom saw me tense up and my dentist said, "Oh, nicked her there a bit, so you might see a little blood." I got home and after an hour, my entire neck was swollen up like a frog and my voice was squeaky because of the air pressure. A pocket of air was pressing against my heart. Dirty air at that, because of the bacteria in my mouth. I was admitted to the hospital as a code 4, with the code 5 being dead. When my mom tried to sue the dentist for damages, he claimed I was kicking and screaming and out of control during the appointment, even getting his secretary to vouch for him and testify. Total BS. I liked the dentist and I was a people pleaser. Also, laughing gas. My mom's lawyer was super pessimistic and told her just to settle and sign an NDA because she had a small chance of winning. So, my mom settled, being naive and scared to take on an office full of liars. She could never disclose who the dentist was, and we've heard other horror stories throughout the years about this dentist effing up other people's mouths. It sucks because every lawyer we've talked to after the fact says we had a very strong case, and it's likely we would have won. Like, really won. I'm pretty sure the company is bankrupt now, since it's been almost 15 years and the product hasn't seen the light of day. I was interviewing with a company that was working on a new design for a public toilet that was going to change everything. It consisted of the following. 1. A pair of toilets back to back. One would rotate up into the wall where it would be thoroughly cleaned and then rotated back down so the other, recently used toilet could be swung up into the wall for its turn in the washer. 2. The toilets wouldn't have the traditional water pool, but would instead have a conveyor belt that would carry the poo and whatever else back to an open pipe, clog-free. I quickly saw that this product was going nowhere, so I declined to work for them, but sent them a 2 or 3 page email about the pitfalls of the design. 1. What happens when the auto-swapping toilet machine accidentally activates while someone is on the loo? 2. How much more expensive will this be than a regular porcelain John? 3. How hard will it be to retrofit all of the machinery and plumbing for the auto wash into existing architecture? 4. How do you intend on cleaning a conveyor belt that has been exposed to human waste plus whatever other trash that gets put down onto the unit? 5. What will an open vent to the sewer smell like if you don't have the water separation like you do with a regular toilet? welcome to the toilet of the future. Except we're going back to the past where we didn't have indoor plumbing, but also the outhouses are floating. A huge part of The Bachelorette was scripted. The company I worked for at the time was a major tourism service provider and featured prominently in one of the seasons. We were all pulled into meetings with the higher-up managers, given a spiel about what was in our best interest, and spilling any secrets was punishable by a $5 million lawsuit. Please sign here. I gave zero craps about the show at the time. Still don't. Just wanted to do my job. The quote, Bachelorette herself was clearly there to further her public profile or quote, acting career. The scenes were always set up before filming. Behind the camera, nothing was happening. The cast were told where to go, what to do, and how to do it. If half those guys weren't on their phones texting their real girlfriends most of the time, I would be surprised. So fake. So 100% fake. Edit. Well, this is getting a lot more attention than I thought it would. Here's a few tidbits. The NDA was only that we wouldn't spill secrets about the show before episodes involving our company aired. We were also not allowed to, quote, disparage the company, which honestly was easy to abide by since we were treated well and we had excellent managers. The Bachelorette has since gone on to a fairly successful TV career, hosting several shows. All of her official press credits The Bachelorette and her exposure during another elimination-style reality TV show with launching her career. I used to work for a company in the Middle East that provided relocation services to people in America. We represented 3 main companies under 9 different names, which changed every so often when the reviews got really bad. We had receptionists whose main task, aside from damage control, was to write a few extremely positive reviews for each company every single day in order to counter all the negative ones. Our job was to catalog everything our clients wanted to move and then provide the best possible price while lying through our teeth about the service itself. We promised professional movers who had all the necessary training and tools for the job, great prices, quick deliveries, you name it. On moving day, the movers who showed up were often in unmarked trucks or ones with completely different names and branding on them. The workers were often immigrants who were paid under the table and had no experience whatsoever. The deliveries themselves often took a long time, and items were often lost as multiple moves would be stacked into one truck without much labeling of items or categorizing in general. As mentioned earlier, we changed company names fairly often as the negative reviews and bad press stacked up. Moving is a toxic business, and people will always try to undermine and cheat. This is something you should never cheap out on, as the money is well worth the comfort of knowing your move is in good hands. If you are moving, I recommend finding a company that is local if possible, so that you can meet the people who represent it and see that their business is legitimate. More importantly, they will be able to send someone to survey your belongings and give a more realistic quote and time estimate. Even if it costs much more than the quotes you receive online or from salesmen, it is well worth the peace of mind on an already stressful venture. My dad did some top-secret contract work for the Department of Defense back in the 1960s, and he signed a lifelong NDA as part of that job. He's dead now, so I guess it's safe to talk about it. The thing is, he never did break the NDA in any context. The strange part was that the NDA specifically prohibited him from using certain words ever again. The trouble is, some of the words are common vocabulary and it became obvious over the years which words he did not use. Words I know he could not say, because he would find other ways of saying them instead, included ball, balloon, briefcase, bomb, and nuclear. It would have made more sense for him to just say, there's a balloon, instead of, there's an inflatable latex object, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Eventually, he did gradually stop avoiding those words for the most part, although he would not discuss the NDA. I've worked with many internet service providers, at the past one of which I'm still under NDA for, but as for the other ones, the equipment replacement fee, divided by 3, that's how much we paid for the box versus how much we are going to charge you. If you're having an issue / something is broken and you want more money, just escalate the issue about twice for maximum return. Don't go past the supervisor's supervisor, however, because while there may be a level above them still within the call center, if you hit corporate, be prepared, because they are not required to be nice. As an example of the above, the story I tell is an angry lady who was out of service for about 6 hours. She was not happy with our get off our phone offer and escalated again. By doing so, she passed on about $65 worth of credits, 2/3 of her total bill, and a going forward discount on her total bill that would save her about $7 a month for another $80 over the next year. That was not good enough. She escalated past us, and the word came back via email. Her credit for time out of service was instead calculated down to the minute, meaning instead of $65, her new offer was now $1.12 and no discount off the monthly bill. If she attempts to escalate again, I was told to inform her we would take advantage of our service policy and cancel her account. Please return your modem within 30 days or face a $99.99 replacement charge. Had to sign an NDA for a secure shipment that came into a building I ran security at. Shipment came in at 2 a.m., unmarked transit van, 2 guys had to verify their biometrics and give me the correct password, then was required to deactivate the cameras on the floors along the travel routes they took inside the building and wipe the footage of them entering and leaving. Long play videotapes, so easy to say, oops, tape got chewed. They unpacked a set of vases and trundled off to put them in a private vault. Don't know what the heck was in them, but I've seen less security for pallets of precious metal bullion. What screams I peaked in high school? Getting the score of the football game you won against the school's rival tattooed on your shoulder. When I was in high school, this guy a year before me had a fearsome reputation. At house parties, people would fear him just by name alone. He would show up to parties with his cronies and start fights. He came from a decent enough family. Everybody wanted to be on his good side. Anyway, he graduates high school, and most of us were still in 12th grade. I remember he used to come around lunchtime to smoke with the people out front, shoot the breeze, and talk about how much fun it is to sleep in and do nothing and have all this freedom. A couple of months of, oh, cool, to, why are you still here, as we awkwardly shuffled back to class. Some of the popular kids from high school still get together very frequently, and you see updates of it on Facebook. I also keep touch with some friends from high school, and I think that that's nice. However, one of those friends of mine once ran into them during one of their get-togethers. He said hi and happened to be sitting not too far from them at the bar. He said that all they did for the whole night was talk about high school. They looked up old classmates on Facebook, laughed at them, called them names, looked at their spouses and called them names too. They still thought themselves the popular kids, as if they still had some sort of influence on all these people. Everyone has moved on, done interesting things in their life except for them. They're just rehashing old drama and old rumors. One of those girls had a small bit of success as a photographer in high school. She won a couple contests that were aimed at teenagers, and her photos weren't bad. Her parents turned this into a very big deal. Her friends all wanted to be in her photos, and she was dead set on going to art school and getting the recognition she deserved. I don't know if she ever made it into art school or if she dropped out, but she definitely did not become a photographer. Instead, you see her launching some new startup business selling asinine live, laugh, love crap about once a year. I dated a guy with this high school mascot tattooed on his arm. It was such a turnoff. A guy who graduated from my high school back in 2003 was arrested a few years ago for his second DUI. He was wearing his Letterman jacket in his mugshot. At my 10-year reunion, the prom queen came wearing a tiara with a custom Queen 03 sash over her shoulder. I had to go outside, I was laughing so hard. But I'll be danged if she didn't rock that outfit the whole time, so respect. Still sad though. We used to play indoor floor hockey in a loft room in the big gym of my middle school. One game I scored 3 goals, one of them being a bank shot off the wall. The next year I wrote about the game for an assignment in English class and the teacher read it to the class the next day. I'm not sure which one was my peak. Still bullying the nerds at your 10-year reunion. Dropping out of college to promote your pyramid scheme. As someone who recently graduated, the students who returned to the school every time they came home from school just so people would pay attention to them. Also, not sure how to explain it, but the people who now post blank screens and just text on their Snapchat stories that just say things like, always crazy to see who you can really trust when XYZ happens, or surprising to see who really cares about you when you need friends the most. Like I said, I don't know how to explain it, but there's definitely a correlation. I taught at a high school in the US for exactly 1 year. During that year, some guy who had graduated a year or so prior came back to visit about 3 or 4 times. This douche just rolled into the school and would pop into classes to say hi to teachers and students in the middle of lessons. I have no idea why, but for some reason, he was walking around barefoot too. He tried that crap in my class, and I asked him promptly to leave, to which he said to me, Oh, you're new here, and don't understand that I'm sort of a legend around here, so people like to see me come by. Yeah, I kicked, quote, the legend, the heck out, and promptly advised my students to move on with their lives after they were finished with high school. I knew a girl in college who tried to do the same crap as the other guy I just mentioned, but her old school wouldn't allow her and her friends to even enter the building. She was really mad about it and commented, "How could they do that? We ran that school." That was the saddest thing I'd ever heard someone say. Sharing every memory from Facebook, talking about the good old days and wish we could go back when it's only been a few years since graduation. Filming yourself running drills and throwing footballs off camera in front of your van/mobile home. Selling pot to teenagers and then trying to get them to stay and smoke with you. How do you do, fellow kids? Do you also smoke the marijuana? Want to earn money from home and set your own hours? Edit, thank you for the love, and sorry you all have had that, quote, bestie, read, distant acquaintance, reach out to you with a desperate sales pitch. Hey hun, long time no see. I know I bullied the crap out of you in high school, but we're past that now, right? Now, want to buy some terrible overpriced supplements/makeup/essential oils from me? Hashtag boss babe, hashtag be your own boss, hashtag killing it. The class that graduated before me had their 10-year reunion last year, and apparently a big fight broke out over something that happened when they were all still in high school. I guess that's one way to tell if someone peaked in high school. Pretty embarrassing. When I was in high school, the cool kids partied hard. They'd get blackout drunk and used whatever illegal substances they can get. I was looking through some of the profiles of some of those classmates, and a few of them are still doing the same crap. Talking gangsta stuff despite growing up in a middle-class suburb, talking about how they miss their kids who are in CPS custody because they went to jail for using, going on rants about narcs, etc. They're about 27 or 28. What made you cool in high school makes you a loser as a grown adult, especially when you're a parent. Teachers who suck up to the athletes and other popular kids and ignore the less popular kids. Hope you're enjoying the video. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like Am I the Genius, you'll probably love Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. I went to school with a girl whose parents graduated from our high school 20 years prior. All 4 members of their family got the school's logo tattooed. Her boyfriend still goes to the football games and reposts his game highlights on Instagram. We're all 21 to 22. I'm from New Mexico and live in the largest city in the state. We've never had a good high school football team, and the BF usually goes to pick up underage girls and brags to everyone about how he was the star football player. If someone from another team makes a really good play, he'll make some kind of remark about how he could have done it better, or he'll go into a detail about his junior varsity football experience. Making any mention of SAT or ACT scores. Bonus points for that IQ test you took when you were a kid online. Man, I remember how much our high school used to stress about ACT scores. It was like putting all your eggs in one basket. They painted this picture of not being able to get into college if you had anything lower than like a 28 or something. And a small rant here, I hate how much of high school was just learning how to take tests. I never absorbed any of the information on the ACT categories, which were math, science, reading, and English. Some of those science graphs would have been genuinely interesting if I weren't under the pressure of taking a test. The ACT and all the prep work boils down to, how do I take this test as efficiently as possible with the time I have? And they wonder why we suck at college. I was in the National Honor Society, so I know a little bit about leadership anytime after high school. Still wearing your Letterman jacket and class ring in your 30s. Talking about high school sports games from a different decade as if they meant something. Still living in your hometown and looking forward to that night at the bar just before Thanksgiving when everyone who left comes home, so you can talk about high school stuff to people who have grown up and have real lives now. I have a good one for this. My cousin once dragged me out to a local bar that I don't particularly care for due to its reputation. But I was going through a separation and figured I could use a night out. A guy comes up to me, clearly already drunk, and belligerently declares, "I've never seen you in here before." I replied, "That's because I've never been in here before." "Well, I'm just saying, I've never seen you here before." "Okay." "I'm John. I used to play football at the school up the road. You know, the school just up the road, up on the hill." "Yes, I know the school. I went to the same school.
Yeah? I played football there.
Good for you?
I don't remember you from school.
I don't imagine you do.
Well, I'm just saying, I played football there and I don't remember you.
Finally, he walked away. More like stumbled away. This was back in around 2013. I graduated in 2004. He was 1 or 2 years ahead of me. So it had been over a decade since he graduated, and he was using his high school football to hit on chicks at the bar. He moved on to hit on my cousin, so I pretended to be her lesbian lover to chase him off. She thanked me for it. Guy is a total tool and always was. Edit, I seem to be catching a little flack from a few people for being, quote, rude myself. I left a portion of the conversation out to avoid being too long-winded. I did ask him if he remembered a secretary at the school, and he started trash-talking her. I told him she was my mother. He paused, at least he stopped trash-talking mom, and then cycled back to not remembering me belligerently. To add a bit more context, I remembered him from school from a different belligerent encounter. He randomly said to me one day,
"You're like some kind of pothead, right?"
I said no and asked why he thought that. He explained that I hung out with a few known potheads. I did, and that must mean I was a pothead too. So I explained that they were just my friends, and just because they smoked didn't mean I had to do it too, and that I didn't, which was the truth. He repeated the notion that I must be because of who I hung out with, so I explained again that I didn't. He finally dropped the subject. This dude has always been belligerent, douchey, repetitive, and incapable of carrying a conversation. Hope this info and context clarifies things. My friends used to get together to play Halo, the old 4-person split-screen multiplayer, and they destroy me every time. Now, we've all moved away, and we play shooters together online occasionally. I win almost every time now that they can't see my screen. Those suckers' screen peaked in high school. I'm mad. I'm mad about this pun. Dying before graduation. Yeah, okay. That mean you peak in high school by default, huh? A guy graduated 2 years before me, in 2006. He got a job as a school narc my senior year. Basically, a job that is somewhere below security and barely a step above student. We had our 10-year reunion last year in the school gymnasium, and there he was, with the sunglasses on at 8 p.m., sporting a sweet Flavor Saver and Dickie shorts, with his black socks pulled up to his knees. As was the fashion for all the bros at my high school when we attended. He was making the rounds, trying to enforce every single rule that was imposed on students. Meanwhile, we are all 27 to 29 years old and nobody is taking his crap. Eventually, someone told him, "You were a tool in high school. Nothing has changed. Get lost, narc." He then started listing every girl he, quote, boned in high school. It was hard watching that guy spiral so hard while everyone was laughing at him. Edit. A Flavor Saver is a nickname we gave for the patch of hair that grows directly under your bottom lip. It's a Flavor Saver because when you go down on a woman, the juice gets in there and can taste it later. I hated reading that. It's just a joke we'd say because it was very popular amongst the bro crowd in high school. Basically, a guy who tries way too hard. Because they couldn't grow beards or mustaches but could attain one of those. I have a friend. We'll call him Dave. That isn't his name because his family is Iranian, but we'll call him Dave. I also went to school with another person who I'll call Jerkhead, because he's a jerkhead. He refused to be called by his actual name anyway, and insisted on being called by his nickname, which for the purposes of this tale, we shall call Massive Wanker. Dave applied for a job and got it. It was a pretty serious gig, a finance job that paid extremely well. He got it and arrived for his first day. The guy who hired him showed him around the building, then showed him to his desk and introduced him to his immediate manager. It was Jerkhead. This was literally about 15 years after we'd left school, and everyone who wasn't a follow Jerkhead thought Jerkhead was far in the past. Nope. Dave said, "Oh, hi Jerkhead." Jerkhead replied, it's actually Massive Wanker if you don't mind." Dave said, "What, still?" He then went down to the lobby and paced around for 10 minutes and then just walked out. Nobody wants Jerkhead to be their boss. Dave now works elsewhere and seems happy. Jerkhead, however, no idea. Don't care. Why? Because he's a proper freaking jerkhead. A football coach at my high school held a record as a linebacker for when he was in high school in the 80s. One kid a few years ago on the first string varsity team came 30 yards away from breaking that record, and the coach promptly took him out of the game and kept him for the rest of the season. Only one game left at that point, so no one could break his record from 30 years ago. One of the few good things, maybe the only good thing, about the UK's usually screwed education system is that hardly anyone, except those who have had an expensive private education, gives a crap about their old school. No loyalty to the old school. Sports loyalty when at school was practically non-existent. No one, apart from those on the teams, usually gave a single crap about how the sports teams did. No yearbooks, no jackets, no proms. At least when I went to school, the aberration seems to be creeping in now. No one gives a crap. School reunions are rare if a thing at all here. I still know and see a few of my classmates or ones who were at school when I was there, but only because they still live locally and it's not that big a place. The others, I have no idea where they are, how they are, even if they're still alive, and with maybe 2 or 3 exceptions, have no great wish to find out. Still drinking in the same pub you drank in as a student, because that's now full of students. So you're that guy or girl who never left home and drinks with school kids much younger than you. Never advancing your life past the moment when you graduate. I have a cousin who still lives with his parents, has had the same job he had since junior year, and has done nothing else with his life. Alternatively, I have a cousin the same age still living with his mom, but he's going to college and taking care of his grandmother. I think he wants to make it big as a concept artist, but he's working on a fallback degree before he makes the big leap. Huge difference. See, living with parents isn't a bad thing. America is kinda unique in how it treats that. Because you'll find that in a lot of European and Asian countries, people will stay with their parents into like their 30s, and even start their own new families to stay, rather than just saying, "You're 18 now, screw off and have fun." That being said, people in those situations are the second scenario, because they're still trying to support themselves and take care of family. Really aggressive sport parents. I stayed at the same hotel as a Little League team, and there wasn't a single parent that I didn't despise. Your only friends are from high school. You tell your college grad older brother, yes, you got a math-heavy degree, but in high school I took Algebra 2 and you took geometry like everyone else looking for the easy path. Says to older brother, everyone looked down on you in high school. Gets ticked when older brother says, you are 38, you graduated 20 years ago, please tell me you have something to be proud of from the past 2 decades. That's oddly specific, dude. You want to talk about it? Are you projecting a little bit there, bud? You need to talk to someone about that? Want to see my prom pictures? I used to be so fit back in high school. You should have seen me play ball back in the day. I probably could have gone to play college. Want to see my highlight reel? I had a guy every other week when I was a teenager. Look how skinny I was back then. I was cheer captain of my high school. I made sure people feared me when I walked the halls. It's like, okay, we get it. You were popular and feared. We're nearly 30 now. Get over yourself. I work in HR and once had a resume that mentioned the applicant had been the captain of the local high school football team. He was in his 50s at the time he submitted this application. In the wise words of my bowels after I have Taco Bell, sometimes you just gotta let that crap go. I did some work at a guy's house when I was about 20 when I was on summer break from college. I was doing some landscaping and such. This guy was a cop, about 35, and was married with a pretty nice house. I would work there, and he would pop over to the house once or twice a day for lunch or whatever, and would check on how the work was going. But one day, he tells me to come to the garage with him. He is searching around the garage for something, but won't tell me what. Finally, he finds a box with his old homecoming crown from high school when he was named Homecoming King. He started talking about how high school was such great memories and all that. He was trying to show off and thought I'd be really impressed, but I was really embarrassed for him, to be honest. My mom, a 42-year-old, has a giant stack of numbers that boys gave her in high school. She brings them out to brag every now and then. It's embarrassing. A Slipknot tattoo, an older model Honda Civic, and an assistant manager job at Pizza Hut. The Civic has nothing to do with this, and you will leave that poor little well-built car alone. A high school teacher who berates a student, me, for deciding not to go to prom. You're going to regret it for the rest of your life. I see why you became a high school psychology teacher. I'm late to the party, but a former coworker of mine who just turned 45 years old posts pictures and messages about him and his brother breaking track records in high school. Sometimes it's a picture of almost 30-year-old newspaper clippings, other times it's trophies, or maybe it's a nostalgic message of wanting to go back in time to high school and being the greatest again. He also likes to mention one of his records is still unbroken. I wished he had cared about his job performance as much as his track and field record. My time working with him would have been much less stressful. Loud mufflers and revving your engines on residential streets. I live in the South, so every single Ford F-150 I see driving in my town? Gather round, kids. This one is freaking weird. About 10 years ago, I briefly toyed with the idea of moving from New Jersey back to my crappy town in Pennsylvania. My job sucked. I needed a change of scenery, and there was this really good opportunity, surprisingly, back in that crappy town. We're talking $10K more in pay, cheaper living, closer to family, and what few friends I had left from high school. This, I should note, was when I still had my high school on my resume. I show up for the interview, and the hiring manager has a shrine to our high school in his office. Football jersey bearing his name is framed and hanging above his desk. He has pencil cups with the school crest on it. He has mugs bearing the school name. The first thing that jumps out at me is, where did you get all this crap? We didn't have a bookstore. I have no idea how you would acquire a high school mug or a pencil cup. Yet, there they were. This guy was elated when I sat down and began talking about high school, asking me if certain teachers he had were still there when I went. He had about 25 years on me. Some of them were, as they were fresh out of college when he was in high school. After about a half hour, I ask him if he has any questions about, my experience or skills. He waves his hand and says, "Nah man, don't worry about it. You can handle this job." Sends me to get fingerprinted for the background check and tells me he'll call in 2 to 3 weeks once the background check is done with my start date. 3 weeks pass, no contact. He isn't responding to my calls. Finally, I catch him on the phone and he's apologetic. Surely I would understand, however, that he simply had to hire the guy who came in after me. He hired some kid who had gone to the same high school but actually played football. The job required a bachelor's degree, quote, or equivalent. Kid had just been kicked out of college, it was in the papers. For an inappropriate assault, he was able to plead down to a misdemeanor. The hiring manager, in yet a new level of unprofessionalism, is telling me all about this, but adding that even though he doesn't have his degree, he has 3 years of college plus all that leadership experience from playing football, so it's equivalent. But hey, no hard feelings, dude. I should add that this guy went to Penn State. He also had a law degree from Temple. I only knew this because of his LinkedIn. He had no diplomas or college swag in his office. Now, I'm all about being proud of your alma mater if that sort of thing matters to you. It just boggles my mind that the last time this guy felt so proud was freaking high school football. Not when he graduated from one of the most well-known, thanks to football, sort of, state schools around. Not when he earned a law degree from a respected Philadelphia law school. Nope. This guy's proudest achievement was playing on the football team of a small Catholic high school that won a championship 2 times in the 45 years that it was open. Honestly, I feel like I dodged a bullet. I don't think I could have taken talking about high school every day. Found a better job anyway, and never went back to that town even for a visit.
Hey, psst, over here. What black market do kids at your school run?
I used to deal in whiteboard markers for teachers in high school. One teacher had a tendency to hoard them, leaving none for other teachers. I would take markers from him and provide them to other teachers in need. While there was no formal payment, I was given a little bit more leniency at times, e.g., request to leave the classroom for a moment. Once the marker would start squealing on the whiteboard because it was almost empty, I'd get teachers giving me a nod as if to say, "You got the goods?" I'd then supply them with the marker color of their choosing, usually black. It was actually a lot of fun, and I never heard teachers talk about my systems or chastise me for taking markers. I was in elementary school when pogs were big. Everyone had cool slammers and stuff, but I didn't have money for good ones. My dad made one out of 1/2-inch mild steel for me and used an engraving pen to make a simple pattern. Everyone was asking me where I got them from. I didn't want to lose my unfair edge, but I also knew I could make money. My dad had a big sheet of this 1/2-inch steel. I told them I was the only one who could get them. I sold them for $15 a pop. My dad kept 10, I got 5. And that's when I learned what overhead was. I went to a private high school with a strict dress code, ties, belt, etc. So, I bought a bunch of ties and belts from a thrift store and ran a lucrative rental business out of my locker. Locker accessories such as carpets and magnets. Carpets? In a locker? Do you mean like floor mats? Or small rugs? I didn't know there were schools with walk-in lockers. Used to crush up warheads and mix them with sugar. Sold them by the straw with the ends melted. 50 cents a piece. I don't know if this counts, but me and my brother would take money to beat all the challenges in GoldenEye 007 for N64, so people got all the cheats. The invincibility challenge was the toughest. I used to sell Coke, the drink, because they didn't allow fizzy drinks to be brought in. Authorities have reported that a young student was identified selling Coke in a middle school. Hold on, I'm getting reports that it is, in fact, Coca-Cola and not the other thing. There goes that story. I have family in New York and would go to visit a couple of times a year back in high school. Every once in a while, we'd visit Chinatown in New York City, and I'd end up buying hundreds of dollars worth of fake watches, Rolex, Tag, Gucci, etc., return to school, and sell them for double than what I paid for them. Pokemon cards we would hide under playground equipment and trade them because the teachers would take them if they saw them. So we always set up deals in class and created a whole Pokemon card trading network. My school used the metallic ends of pencils as a currency. Bronze was rarest, so it was the most expensive. Green was most common, so it was the least. We traded for erasers or pencil cases or a spot up in the 4-square line. Eventually got banned, but we still operated with people acting as banks to keep the currency hidden and to keep transactions hidden. At my school, they took all the sweets out of the vending machines and replaced them with healthy snacks. In the local town, there was a sweet shop where you could buy a kilo of mixed sweets for £5. So every week I would go there and buy 1 pound of small paper bags and spend the Sunday night before school repackaging them all ready for the week ahead. Come Monday, I would go into the school and load up my bag up every day selling the bags for 50 pence. Cuban sandwiches straight out of a duffel bag before school. They were bomb, cheap, and way better than the lunch in the cafeteria. Oh my god, no, you guys have got to check out this movie called Chef. It has Jon Favreau and John Leguizamo in it, and among the incredible dishes shown in the movie, cubanos are part of it. It's a sandwich made with marinated pork, ham, cheese, and pickles, all in between pan cubano, a specific type of sandwich bread. It gets pressed on a plancha, and it looks so good. I know I talk about food way too much on this channel, but you all have to watch it or try it yourself. The only guy in the school whose family had proper TV channels used to tape wrestling events and rent them out. Apple laptops in middle school. Some had iTunes, some didn't, and the kids wanted it, so I apparently was the only one who knew how to transfer the installer with my USB. I put it on everyone's laptop for gifts, favors, etc. in return. Got caught by the sub that day. I told her it was my flash drive, I could do what I wanted with it. And that's how I got my second detention in my life. Gifts were typical middle schooler stuff. Yu-Gi-Oh cards, fruit snacks, best food trades during lunch, gaining popularity, and hanging out with the cool people. Obviously they were taking advantage of me, but I didn't mind. When I was in the 6th grade, a teacher sold candy in between classes at marked up rates. A student decided to undercut her. That put an end to all candy sales. These little game coupons that our teacher gave out for winning class quiz games. Right when people were starting to get scanners and printers in their own homes, some kid made copies of his coupons and sold or traded them to other students. Since I have some people asking what the coupons could be traded for, it was usually a piece of candy or a pencil with a fun print or something similar. I think the kids ended up getting caught like 2 weeks into the scheme. Edit, a lot of people are comparing this to Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which I've heard of but never read before. I think kids are just clever and do this kind of thing on their own because a lot of people in the replies had similar things happen in their own schools as well. I don't know if this is where the kid got his idea or not, but this may have been before those books came out. Silly bands. I remember a kid made like $50 in one day. You know, I actually looked this up because I remember silly bands when I used to go to school, and they ended up being banned in classrooms for being too distracting, which, you know, schools will ban anything if they deem it, quote, distracting. But there have been incidents where children have cut off circulation by extending several silly bands up their arms, in some cases causing serious injuries. You're telling me that my T-Rex shaped silly band would have cut my circulation off? I had the principal's secretary's handwriting down and used to sell hall passes for $1 each. Made a killing. I don't really know how much I made, but it was in the realm of $5 a day. Sometimes I went dry because you needed the actual pass paper, but I finally figured out how to get into the supply closet, slide the student ID by the latch bolt. I only took a few pads at a time so they wouldn't get suspicious. Edit, I could also forge my mother's signature. Did it so well that when I brought in a note from her that she scribbled on the dash, they called her to confirm. This kid committed forgery. What's not a crime is subscribing to Am I the Genius? Or if you like these videos, you might like Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. Thanks for watching! MP3s and CDRs were just becoming available. A guy I knew made a killing on mixed CDs. Every week he circulated forms to fill out, where you selected the songs you wanted on the CD. The newest hits were on the top and changed weekly. The rest of his library filled the rest of the form, and there was a space for requests. He'd deliver your disc the following week. He seriously made bank for a couple years until everybody started getting their songs from LimeWire or whatever. I don't know what he's doing now, 20 years later, but I don't doubt he's successful. Just as a bit of an aside, since a few responses have mentioned LimeWire, when this guy started doing it in high school, the only real avenues for music sharing were Usenet groups and IRC. Nintendo games. Some kids sold them off for like 10 or 15 bucks a pop. I don't know where he got them from, but he said he just told his dad what he wanted and his dad would get it for him. He'd ask for the same ones over and over and it didn't matter. He'd end up with 5 copies and he'd just sell 4 of them. Either the kid was the most spoiled brat in history, or his dad was straight up stealing them anyhow. Anyways, I could never get any. I had a Sega, but I remember that kid making a killing in grade 3. Slap bracelets. Small southern town with just a Walmart and 1 or 2 small clothing stores that carried them. Anyone who went out of town to do clothes shopping or because their parents worked there would come back with bracelets we couldn't get here, so a little black market popped up. This girl Danielle convinced my best friend and I, along with some other people, that she could forever change the taste of saliva in our mouth, so that our saliva would taste like watermelon, cotton candy, bubblegum, etc. forever. She made us wait a couple days so we could really think about what flavor we wanted in our mouth forever. For example, she would tell us, "Are you sure you always want everything you eat to have a hint of watermelon?" Anyways, after a couple days and we picked a flavor, she charged us money. I can't remember how much, but it was probably 50 cents or something. She made us chew on all this crazy stuff like paper clips, erasers, and other things. Obviously, our saliva never changed flavor, and she stopped this. But I worked at Starbucks a couple years ago in my hometown, and she came in and didn't even recognize me. And all I could think about was how that girl had me chewing on paper clips. I would buy 6 packs of soda for $1.79 and resell the 6 sodas for a total of $3. Not labeled for individual sale? Come on, bro. 2 years ago, I was a sophomore in high school, and freshmen weren't allowed to go off campus, but everyone else was. So I'd take orders, go to the local fast food shops, and get the goods. I'd up the price by about $2 and ended up making about $200 a month. The swim team or something were selling these fundraiser lollipops, and they were insanely popular. I found the website on the wrapper and discovered I could buy my own way cheaper. I could also buy only the popular flavors. So I had only the best flavors and I could undercut the actual fundraisers by a quarter, still making over 100% profit. I quickly became a top seller and made bank until the copycats started popping up. Banana chips were 25 cents in the vending machine in middle school. I always went to school early, so I always ended up buying all of them and selling them for 50 cents a bag. My school was an extremely conservative Christian boarding school. Things that were forbidden were, by no means a complete list, jeans for girls, shorts for everyone, candy, any sort of food in the dorms, cell phones, any form of gaming system, TV or movies, playing non-Christian songs on musical instruments, clothes made by popular brands, A&F and Hollister, etc. Naturally, there were a few students who started selling food, candy, and A&F/Hollister clothes. Why people bought these from them, I don't know, but they made huge amounts of money. A lot of the kids at that school were rich doctors' kids, so there was plenty of money to go around. One guy sold a box of Altoids for $15. TLDR, my high school was so strict that the black market was people paying ridiculous amounts of money for food and snacks. I lived in an area with a lot of retiree-age people, a lot of which ended up raising their grandchildren. It really isn't a good area. Being older and from a rural area, they still don't trust online sites like eBay or Amazon, so I started ordering people things from those sites for actual money and added a charge for me to be making money off of it. It eventually got shut down because I got someone a USB in the shape of a pistol. It was the size of a USB and clearly a USB, but it didn't matter. The principal actually got the police involved to try to get me in real trouble. Some kids made a habit of stealing chalk when the teachers weren't looking. After a while, they started selling it, charging more for longer and fresher sticks. It ended with someone eventually snitched on a buyer, which started a cascade of counter-snitching. A cascade of counter-snitching. That is such a beautiful sentence. Many pockets were emptied, some with chalk, but most of the dealers had hidden their chalk and got away with it. I was a Pokemon card smuggler. In 6th grade, my friend's dad overheard my friend and I talking about how much our Pokemon cards were worth. He was shocked to learn some were $10 to $20 a piece. He made the comment, "Shame they won't be worth that much when you go to sell them." That comment stuck with me, and a few days later, I started selling my cards at school. I made a list of everything I had with prices next to them. I'd pass the list around during class, and kids would meet up with me between classes to buy what they wanted. I was making crazy amounts of money for a middle schooler, and before long, parents were complaining that their kids were skipping lunch because they were spending their lunch money on Pokemon cards. So, the school banned them. But I still had a good bit of inventory to move. I did all kinds of things to avoid getting caught. I hid cards in boxes of crayons, I put a few sheets of sleeves in the middle of a binder full of legit notes. I even hollowed out an old textbook to hide all my cards. Despite getting searched 3 to 5 times over the next few weeks, my cards were never found, and I was able to sell all of them before Christmas break. I ended up making close to $800 and was able to buy my entire immediate and extended family Christmas gifts with my own money for the first time. Once all the other kids learned how much money I had made, they were blown away, and suddenly everyone was selling their cards. Problem was, no one was buying them anymore. TLDR, I started a one-kid Pokemon card black market, smuggling them into school, and got out of the game right before the bubble burst. Pencils for pencil fighting. The way it worked is, one person would hold their pencil out, grabbing both ends, and then the other person would see if they could break the pencil with theirs by holding one end and then pulling the other end back, snapping it down on the other pencil. We made a website that started as us doing stupid prank phone calls and jerkwad stunts. It turned into a homework sharing and answers to tests and quizzes that people would steal later. Luckily, I wasn't involved by that time, but my friends weren't involved in graduation. Marbles were big at my primary school. Real big. It got to the stage where they were only allowed for 3 months a year, as we would no longer discuss anything but the game we had or the make we wanted to pay for. That was marble season. Now you could buy a big bag of cat's eyes from the supermarket, but they wouldn't get you far. To play the high-stakes games, you needed a specked egg, a glitter bomb, a tidal wave, or something exotic, but those suckers were pricey. Us poor kids couldn't afford those things, so we secretly gambled our marbles through the year. So when marble season opened, we had amassed enough marbles to really be ahead of the game. Being caught with marbles outside of marble season was bad, real bad. One kid got 5 strokes of the cane. This being so, it was a big risk to hide in the shadows of the trees and sling those little glass balls about. Not only did it hone your skills for the season's start, but you got good at taking the shot and then acting nonchalant. Marbles were currency. You could trade lunches with them or buy time on playground equipment. There was a good reason they banned marbles at my school. We turned it into some sort of mafia crap. My mom won a year's supply of double-stuffed Oreos. I sold them in Ziploc bags while in 4th grade to everyone I could, even teachers. My mom thought my friends were eating them all. Me and my best friends sold packs of gum in middle school. We'd make around $30 a day, and the teachers were going crazy trying to find where all the gum was coming from. As model students, they never suspected us. I'm kinda glad that I'm not the only one who knew high schoolers obsessed with gum. Every day, almost every period, I would hear people asking people for gum. They'd even ask me, nerdy kid who no one really talked to, if I had gum. That's when you knew they were desperate. Live fish. Some Asian kid would walk around school with a few live pet fish in his school bag and sell them. Pop rocks in the late 70s. Kid drove 40 miles from Alabama to Catholic school in Georgia and got him an AL and doubled the price in GA. Sister Charles broke up the ring before we could find out if drinking Coke and eating Pop Rocks blew up your stomach. Pink eye, $5. In middle school, you could come to school with pink eye and make a lot of money off of kids who wanted to miss a test. Kid would just stick his finger in his own eye and then in yours. The f***? No! I hate that. These Hispanic kids in my school brought a bunch of Mexican snacks to class and sold them for cheap. Those mango lollipops with the chili powder on them, or whatever it is, were the bomb. Actually, I happen to have a hustle. My friend lived in New Orleans. She moved away from my state and came up to visit. It was just Mardi Gras, and she had a whole trunk full of beads. She gave me an entire bucket of them because they were literally in over their heads. I marketed them at school as authentic beads from the real Mardi Gras, and kids were paying 50 cents for one of them. I should have majored in business instead of becoming an art student. During elementary school in the 80s, many candies weren't individually wrapped for resale in stores. Think Warheads, etc. I bought bulk packs of candy. Didn't matter what kind, although atomic fireballs were my cash cow. I individually packed them, or maybe a couple to a pack depending on the candy. I used those tiny Ziplocs you see people use for drugs. Being around adults a little devoid of scruples, I was able to get those in bulk from a local head shop called High on the Hill. It was a surreal time looking back. I was the only supplier for a year solid in 4th grade. I made so much bank for a 10-year-old, it was insane. I would make $100 a week just off of atomic fireballs. The bulk jugs were about $5 or $6 each wholesale, and at a quarter each, it worked out to about $60 a jug profit if I recall. Luckily, school came easy to me because it was a full-time job keeping stock, packaging product, counting piles of change, budgeting, keeping a bank register, mom got a separate account that I used for my money, dodging the man, etc. It was turbulent as I never really had a group of friends as a kid, but in the 4th grade, I was the freaking man. Going from having no real, quote, good friends, and having my time divided by either being picked on or ignored, to becoming the belle of the ball was surreal. Even at that time, I was able to realize what was going on. Their smiles were all fake. Their interest was not in me, but rather what was in my bag any given day. Girls were not saying hello because they were being polite, or even the least bit interested in talking to me. They were just waiting their turn for their fix. That denim bag got more attention than I ever dreamed of. I was just along for the ride. I had laid the groundwork and provided the blueprint. When the 5th grade started, there was competition, but they were weak. They would always sell out or only buy enough to make a few bucks here and there, largely selling lollipops or prepackaged stuff, Hershey's Kisses, Bit of Honey or Tootsie Rolls, whatever they could grab at the store before school. It was amateur hour. They had made a mockery of something I took seriously. As seriously as a 10 to 11-year-old can take something. I closed up shop pretty quickly after the school year began. The fast life and fast money was over. The excitement wasn't there, the smiles weren't as big. Kids came to me as a last resort. They bought the popular kids completely out before looking my way. It was like flipping a switch. My first day without the bag, I had a few kids ask if I was holding, but once word got around that I was out of the game, everything went back to normal. No friends, no conversation, no one to sit with at lunch or on the bus. No one interested, fake or otherwise. It was the first time I had ever really witnessed the dynamic of being disingenuine. I had always been authentic, and after it was all over, I was happy to stay that way. I've never really recounted this time into words. As it turns out, I learned a lot of life lessons in the 4th grade. TLDR, I peaked in the 4th grade. Redditors who have won a lifetime supply contest. How did you win? And how's it going? In college, I frequented a specific Jack-in-the-Box that was walking distance from campus. I'd occasionally talk with the manager, who was a pretty cool guy, and one of only a few people I knew who were into the World Cup. One day he says, "You want a lifetime supply of milkshakes?" I thought he was joking, so I was like, sure. And he handed me a huge stack of free milkshake coupons. Not so much a contest, but I guess I won the prize for friendliness. Once won a year's supply of the Tropicana juice drink. Was awesome, but you could only buy 4 cartons a month with dated vouchers, so it never really felt as magical as I was hoping. 9-year-old me wanted like a dedicated Tropicana faucet in the kitchen. When I was a kid, there was a phone-in competition to rename a popular children's cereal. It cost money to vote as it was a premium number, but my mother let my younger brother vote for fun. What we didn't know at the time was by voting, you'd be entered to win a lifetime supply of this cereal, and my brother won. So they called up, and our mother told them we didn't want it. My mother ruined our childhood by telling Kellogg's we didn't want their lifetime supply of cereal. I could be eating that right now. 16 years later, I could still be enjoying that cereal. This was in the 90s. My granddad won a lifetime supply of Reader's Digest. He was the only doctor in a small village in India, population under 1,000. He started stacking them up in his clinic, and the village kids would randomly browse through them. As long as there wasn't a rush or they weren't being loud, my granddad would let them sit there for as long as they wanted. I spent my summer vacations in the village with my grandparents. My parents had moved to a nearby city long before I was born. And so it happened that every summer, I'd come to the village to find my rural friends speak better English than anyone else in the village, and in some cases better than my English school-educated city friends, and sharing jokes from the "life's like that" and "laughter is the best medicine" sections. Every time I think back on it, I feel happy and proud of my granddad. When I was in college, a guy in my fraternity was featured in a Nike running commercial. He was paid a fixed amount, and they would randomly send him shoes throughout the 2 years I knew him. After he graduated, shoes still showed up at the house every quarter until I graduated. The funny part of the story is that he was on the university cross-country team, D1, and when he signed the paperwork, it voided his scholarship. The coach calls him in his office and berates him for a half hour on how he, quote, screwed up his scholarship. His response was priceless. I have 4 more semesters and Nike paid me enough to cover in-state tuition for that time. Also, I hate running, but I'm good enough to have gotten a scholarship. Now, I have school paid for and will never run again. Good luck to you all, though. Want a lifetime supply of knives? I guessed correctly how many sheets of paper the knife could stab through. After I broke the first 2, I was told my third was my last one. Apparently, the knives were supposed to last a lifetime. I went to school with a kid whose mom won a lifetime supply of aluminum foil. They wrap everything in foil. His whole lunch every day was wrapped in foil, sandwich, fruit, etc. And then they make one of those baking pouches, and that's his lunch bag. When we had dessert potluck, his cookies came wrapped in foil. I asked him about it, and he said that they even wrap all their Christmas presents in it, and they still get too many boxes of it. They give it away to friends and family. This is something I had no idea could be a problem until I read about it. When Naked brand juice smoothies first came out in San Francisco, I happened to be a homeless vagabond. I sat there by the trolleys with a sign, "Homeless, hungry, anything helps." A nice lady was handing out free coupons to try out this new juice at Whole Foods. She saw my plight and was probably sick of handing out coupons, so she dumped hundreds of them in my hat. I lived off of Naked fruit juice smoothies. Every day I would walk into Whole Foods and redeem one of my coupons. I had a seemingly endless supply, and the company hadn't put much information on them, so they didn't expire. Someone grifted my bag though a few months later, but I was so amped up on B vitamins and antioxidants that I chased him down. He said sorry and shared a huge package of imitation crab with me. I made a new friend and bought him some Naked juice with my coupon. I ended up losing the rest of my coupons by being an idiot, but that's when I sort of had a lifetime supply of something. My friend and I were in a competition at an arena football game to win, quote, free pizza and beer for a year. The first person to kick a field goal from 15 to 20 yards away would win. Apparently, their definition of a year's worth of pizza and beer is 12 24-packs of beer and a large Rocky Rococo's pizza per month for 12 months. We had to pick up all 12 cases of the beer from a distributor at one time, so we had a party. Obligatory not me, but a friend. A friend of mine won a lifetime supply of pizza from Pizza Hut. They calculated his age, the average pizzas a person consumes per year, did some mathematical calculation, and FedExed him a check for $37,000. In my book, he won. Want to win a lifetime supply of free YouTube content? Subscribe to Am I the Genius or Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. Thanks for watching! Not me, but this happened back to a good friend in 2010. He was wasted waiting in line for Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. Got asked if he wanted to do a skit involving punching balloons on air. So he gets on air and they dress him and 2 other people up in karate uniforms. The two other people go and kind of try to get some balloons, but you can tell they were shy. My buddy gets up there completely drunk, and Jimmy asks him his name. He tells them his name is Shonuff, the Shogun of little town in Northeast to protect his privacy. Questlove gets up from behind the drum kit and gives Shonuff a hug. My friend proceeds to ninja kick all the balloons, and Jimmy tells him he just won a lifetime supply of soft taco kits. The Roots play a theme song, Who's the Master? Shonuff! I lived with him at the time, and we seriously had 2 pallets of taco kits dropped off at our house. We had them in the cabinets, living room entertainment center, gave them away. But, 1,000 boxes of taco kits is hard to give away. We donated about 200 when we realized we wouldn't use them all. Flash forward 2 more years, 2012, and he once again got back on air to tell a story of how he woke up drunk in a casino elevator. Sure enough, The Roots again play his theme song. I cannot find a YouTube link, and the link we put up was taken down for copyright and cannot find it on Hulu. TLDR, friend got 1,000 taco kits, quote, lifetime, from the Jimmy Fallon show, and The Roots made a theme song for him. He's now been on Jimmy Fallon 4 times since. My wife won a lifetime supply of pet food for a cat. They didn't even bother sending product. They just tacked another few $1,000s onto the $10,000 cash prize. That was a nice little windfall. The only weird thing was that it was paid as a stack of maxed out Visa gift cards. You can't really pay things like mortgages and credit card bills with what amounts to a credit card, so we ended up using the gift cards for things like groceries. It's pretty amazing how far your paycheck goes when your bill for food and incidentals is effectively zero. Didn't win, but received a lifetime pass for a music festival. So far, there have only been 2 years of festival, but they just confirmed the 3rd. 2 of the best weekends of my life. Would recommend. Edit, received it by attending the festival announcement party. Everyone got an envelope upon entry, which clearly had passes in them, but said not to open. At the end of the night, if you still had a sealed envelope, they gave you a quote, lifetime pass. I think about 20 out of 200 people maybe. When I was little, I won a lifetime supply of apples by correctly guessing how many were in a barrel. There were 110 and I guessed 109. The prize was 110 apples at a time each month. It was insane. After the first delivery, my parents begged them to stop. It's impossible for a family of 3 to go through 110 apples before they rot, and our neighbors stopped answering the door when they saw my parents standing there with bags of apples. Grandpa negotiated free cell service for life for him and his wife when the cell company wanted to put up a tower on his farm. After a few years, they started getting charged because the tower was bought by another company and they wouldn't respect the deal. Not sure if this counts, but I got free cable from Cox Communication because their equipment at the drop almost burned my house down. They gave me every channel and internet. Well, some time passed, and they sold to Suddenlink, and I thought nothing of it. Well, I got a bill 2 months later for $600, and I was like, what? Suddenlink refused to honor our agreement with Cox, and to this day, I refuse to pay that bill, and our internet is under my new wife's name. Not a lifetime supply, but my grandpa enters every contest imaginable, and once won free tampons for a year. My sisters and I got to take them because my grandpa doesn't have a uterus. The things he had to post on Facebook to get entries were hilarious. All things about being a strong, independent woman. That man has no shame if it means he can win even something completely useless to him. Edit, for those who are curious about other things he's won, I'll see if I can send this to the editors. Here is a picture of him next to his own life-sized bobblehead of himself for your viewing pleasure. My mother won a lifetime supply of Pez on Let's Make a Deal. It was a few cases of dispensers and candy. I'm really into competitions, and although I've never won a lifetime supply of anything, I've won a year's worth of cheese. Twice. The first time was 12 vouchers, but for the second one, they actually sent me 2 massive screw-off cheese wheels. They were like 25 pounds each. I cut them up and filled my fridge and freezer, and the fridge and freezers of my friends, with cheese. It actually froze and defrosted really well. I'll be eating that cheese for ages. A friend of mine won lifetime Sonic on a radio contest. Every month, he gets a Sonic gift card for $200, and he takes everyone up there for a free meal and spends the rest buying random people's meals. My friend won free chicken from Raising Cane's for life. In order to claim his chicken, he had to present the card given to him. After a few months of free chicken, his wallet was stolen. putting an end to his free chicken. Somebody was very happy when they saw that card in his wallet. It wasn't a lifetime supply, but I won free pizza for a year from this bomb place, Pizza Rev. I only got one pizza a week, but most of the time I'd go with friends, family, or dates, and they'd just give me the entire party's pizzas for free. So really most weeks, I got 2 to 4 free pizzas, and I never missed a week. They knew me by name there, and all new employees would greet me with, "Hey, it's Free Pizza Guy!" I missed that free pizza. Won a lifetime supply of Chuck Taylor Converse. Basically, they sent me 12 vouchers for a free pair of Converse. You could pick high or low top and the color. I think I still have one of the pairs, and the rest I gave to friends and family. Our elderly neighbors won a lifetime supply of Snickers. We have a very large family, parents plus 10 kids, and the summer I was 7, my father was injured at work. While waiting on workers' comp to be paid, our electric, water, and gas were all shut off. Our neighbors ran a hose to our backyard for water, an extension cord for a microwave, and gave us dozens of cases of Snickers. We lived the entire summer on candy bars and ramen. I can't stand the stuff now. Okay, but mad props to the neighbors though, they are the sweetest people. I have a friend that did an Arby's commercial years ago. They gave him an Arby's card that could be used for up to $20 or $25 a day. It's like a gift card that gets topped off daily. Only bad thing is, he can't save the credit to make a big purchase. It has a cap of $25. Not so much one, but my mother-in-law has free broadband for life. Company needed to run a line through her garden. Mother-in-law says sure, but I want free internet forever. Hasn't paid a cent in 2 years, and the disruption to the back garden was minimal and easily fixed. I won a year's worth of burgers from Jack in the Box in college. They gave us 156 cards that would literally work for any burger or sandwich on their menu. I gained about 15 pounds, and then I started to use them as trading tools to get my stoner friends to do stuff. It started with, if you run down to 7-Eleven and get me a Gatorade, I'll give you 1 burger card. And then turned more into things like, you drink that bong water, I'll give you 3 burger cards. It was glorious. The cards definitely didn't last me a year. Not myself, but my aunt won a lifetime supply of donuts from Krispy Kreme. In reality, they just gave her a crap ton of vouchers for a free dozen of donut boxes. I don't remember how many, but I know she got a box a week for at least a couple years last I checked. She won it by being first in line at a new store opening. Why she went, I don't know, since she wasn't like the donut queen or something. Won a lifetime supply of free coffee from a brew shop in town. I guessed correctly how many beans were in a tall plastic cylinder. Shop closed 5 months later. In 2009, I entered the mychipotle.com contest with a music video and came in second place. Second place prize was $5,000 and a party for 50 of our friends at Chipotle. Everyone ate for free. Winning that was awesome, but honestly, the best part was that after the contest was over, Chipotle asked me how many people were involved in the making of the music video we made, and then sent a deck of playing cards for each person. The catch? Each card in the deck of cards had written on it 1 free burrito. Yeah, including jokers. 56 free Chipotle burritos. Since I was the first person to find out and receive these decks of cards, I kept it a secret. I called each person individually and said I had a gift for them. Seeing them open the deck of cards, figure out what it was, then react to it was the best part of this whole thing. Each of them volunteered their time to help make the video with no promise of winning or any reward. So, all in all, no lifetime winnings, but to a bunch of teenagers, it certainly felt like a lifetime of burritos. Didn't win it, but once I was driving down this crappy dirt road and found a pile of thousands and thousands of AA batteries. No idea how they got there, but they were pretty fresh, no corrosion. So I took a 5-gallon bucket, filled it up, and went on my way. 4 years later, I'm about 3 gallons in, and they still power my Xbox controllers. I guess I should add this interesting detail. Strangely, they were Kodak brand. Like they were supposed to be in disposable cameras or something. They didn't ever last very long, maybe half as long as Duracell/Energizer, but they were free. I won a year's worth of ice cream. The deal is for 1 pint a month. Here's the kicker. I live on the other side of the country from the ice cream shop. My parents love it though. I've heard of actors, comedians, and celebs doing Taco Bell commercials. They get a lifetime supply of Taco Bell. They send them special Taco Bell currency after they run out. Usually enough for months worth of Taco Bell. The Sky Dome held a naming contest back in 1987, 2 years before it opened in downtown Toronto. The contest winner, picked at random from the many Sky Dome entries, a play on the stadium's retractable roof, received a lifetime supply of tickets for any event at the Dome. The stadium has changed ownership multiple times, and even the name has changed. It's now the Rogers Center, but the prize is still being honored. I won a lifetime supply of coffee beans for having guessed how many beans were in the tall glass jar during a competition. They arrive faster than I can use them, but the beans are high quality and make fun gifts for friends who like to grind and brew. My aunt won a lifetime supply of rice-a-roni from The Price is Right. She used to get them faster than she can use them, but now, understandably, she's sick of it, so she just stockpiles them in her rice-a-roni closet and donates hundreds of boxes of them at a time. Yes, she has a closet of rice-a-roni. The neighborhood kids love her. Probably too late to answer, but I get to mention my favorite aunt. She passed away 5 years ago now, and a lot of her competition wins were still active, so technically were for her lifetime. But really, she was just the luckiest person I knew, other than dying at 45 of breast cancer. In the time I was aware of her competition entering, she won a car, a free cruise for 2 people for life, a lifetime supply of ice cream, dog food, and some type of chicken nuggets. She won a Coke vending machine that will be refilled for free monthly for a year supply of spaghetti, a lifetime supply of dishwasher tablets, multiple holidays, a free landscaping of her yard, plus tons of stuff I can't remember. She absolutely loved entering competitions, and actually had a dedicated room in her house for it. She was actually pretty good with tactics, tended to enter comps that required answering a question with more than 25 words, because she said these were least likely to have lots of entries. I miss her dearly. She was so full of life and loved talking about her hobby. As far as I know, the lifetime supply of things she won actually continued after her death. The ice cream and dishwater tablets, anyway. My high school geometry teacher's son won a contest where he was featured on boxes of Kraft mac and cheese and also got a lifetime supply of it. He had a picture of it / a cutout of the box on his desk, which was hysterical, and all I remember was him complaining about how sick he was of mac and cheese. I won a lifetime supply of Vegemite. It was only 2 jars. When I was a kid, I won 2 free Blockbuster rentals a month for life. It was awesome for a while. Now, it's not going so well. It wasn't a lifetime supply, but it was a year's supply of flavored milk. The company hosting the competition is based in Perth, Western Australia. The goal of the competition was to rename each flavor of milk to something uniquely Western Australian based on its color. In my case, I renamed the spearmint flavored milk, which is green, to Transperth, which is the public transport service in Western Australia. I came in second place for my submission and won a year's supply of flavored milk. Unfortunately, they couldn't figure out the logistics of sending me the milk, so in the end, they just transferred the equivalent amount of money into my bank account. I think it was about $1,200 or so. The money is long gone and well spent, and the irony is that I don't think I spent any of that money on milk. Go figure. I won a year's supply of Whataburger. Won it in a raffle at the opening of a new restaurant. What it really was 52 coupons for free Whataburgers. So basically, 1 burger per week for a year. Edit. Because of the popularity, I guess I will expand upon this story. I was 14, I think, when my family won this. I am now 17. Once a week, my family would go to Whataburger, and because of the terms of the coupon, one person would get the free #1 combo, and everyone else would get what they wanted, but we would pay. Honestly, they still made money off of us doing this, even though they gave away 52 free burgers. I am still glad though, because it gave us an excuse to eat Whataburger every single week, and who wouldn't want that? Redditors who have been kidnapped. What was your experience like? Are there things you do now that you would have never done before? Serious replies only. My father, quote, kidnapped me when I was 7, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I lived with my alcoholic mother and her insane boyfriend. I wasn't abused physically, but looking back, the mental abuse and neglect was very traumatic. Some borderline child called it things. Anyways, my father had visitation rights and picked me up every other weekend. One weekend, he came to get me and saw that I had not eaten much. Food was almost always under lock and key, and my mom and her boyfriend were nowhere to be found. So, my father told me, pack your stuff. We spent some time hiding out at different places with family, friends, even hotels in Laughlin and Vegas. It was like a mini vacation. I even remember staying at my dad's girlfriend's house when the cops showed up. I hid under the bed while they talked to her. At the end of the day, I never had to go back to my mom's boyfriend's house, and my father won majority custody. I'm not sure how I would have turned out if I had stayed there. Thanks, Dad. When I was maybe 10 or 11, my neighbor kidnapped me. She was this single woman in her 50s who was always super nice to me. She was always on her porch, and she'd wave when I came home from school. Anyway, I was walking home from school and she was waving as usual, but this time she was beckoning me over. I went up to her porch and she asked me if I wanted some meatloaf she made. I freaking loved meatloaf, and she seemed harmless, so I said yes. I expected her to come outside with a plate or something, but instead, she called me in and told me to sit downstairs. I felt weird about it, but I followed her into her basement and sat down on a couch. She brought me a plate of meatloaf and I watched Pokemon 2000 on VHS. She had a freezer with those tube popsicle things too. After I ate, I told her I needed to go home, and she told me my parents called and asked her to keep me while they ran errands. I felt weird about it and suspected she was lying, but I just kind of went along with it. I remember I asked her if I could get my Game Boy at one point from my house, and she said my parents told me not to let me out of her sight. I remember watching Men in Black and falling asleep. When I woke up, I tried leaving, but the door was locked. She left some banana pudding for me on the table for when I woke up, so I just had that and went back to sleep. She opened the door at like 5 in the morning, woke me up, and asked me if I wanted to go home. She looked like she'd been crying. I told her yes, and she let me go. My parents asked me where I was, and I just told them I went home with a friend after school. I didn't have a cell phone, so it was pretty normal for me to just be gone for a day. I didn't see my neighbor on her porch the next Monday, so I knocked on her door. She came outside, and we talked on the porch about stuff. We never talked about that night, and she probably thought I didn't even realize what happened. She didn't say, but I think she had a kid who died a couple years prior and wanted to fill the gap. I never hated her for it or anything. Until I moved a couple years later, I would sit on her porch after school most days, and she listened to my neat facts about space. My sisters and I were kidnapped by our father repeatedly between the ages of 2 and 4. He would take us from our mother. She had brain damage and a serious drug problem, beat us if we made noise, and lock us in a closet and forget to feed us for days at a time. Each kidnapping lasted between 2 weeks and 6 months, depending on how long it took for my mother to realize we were gone and ask for help. He was a very scary man. He just wanted money from the state, food stamps, and welfare. He would also try to get money out of my maternal grandmother. In fact, she's the only reason the cops kept getting involved in trying to locate him. She had money and influence, and used it. I don't remember much because I was so young, but I remember being scared, and in pain, and a uniformed cop opening a door and letting light in. I was terrified of being locked in the dark for years after, and sandy-haired men with mustaches still can make me very nervous. I'm 41 now. When I got divorced, my kids were almost the exact same age as my sisters and I were when the kidnapping started. It was a struggle to keep those old fears in check. I posted this on a different account I don't remember the password for. This is a long one, but it gets good. 2 years ago, I was very hungover on a summer Saturday in Manhattan. A girl I was seeing at the time was angrily getting her things together and proceeded to storm out of the apartment, which was shared by myself and 4 other guys. My old roommates had moved to a new apartment the night before. There are boxes and miscellaneous crap everywhere. I'm laying in bed, dying. It's around 9 or 10 a.m. About 5 minutes after the girl storms out, there's a knock at the door. She must have forgotten her phone charger or something. I get up in my boxers, walk across the living room where all the unpacked and half-packed crap is, and open up the door. Behind the door was one of the scariest faces I've ever seen. Very beady eyes, thick mustache, scarred up face, balding man in his 50s. I was holding the door slightly ajar. Since it wasn't who I thought it was, I stepped behind the door a bit to hide my pale body and stuck my head through the crack. He asked if Billy was home, one of my old roommates. I told him that Billy had moved out the day before. With that said, he put all of his body weight into the door, sending me flying back. This dude was enormous. As I was recovering from this and trying to think why someone would be so angry with Billy, this gentleman open hand slapped me so hard I hit the ground. I am now awake. My new house guest identifies himself as Big Tony and demands to speak with Billy. I go into my room, right off of the living room where Big Tony is now setting up shop, and put on pants and grab my phone. Tony has already made it very clear not to call the police or try to run out of my apartment, or I might fall out of the window or get shot in the knees. Apparently, Billy owes him a lot of money. I call Billy, who says he's never heard of Big Tony, and Billy is convinced it's a joke. Tony asks for the phone, where I hear Billy telling Big Tony to go screw himself and to get out of his old apartment. Tony is now upset and starts telling Billy that his roommate, myself, might get hurt if he doesn't learn some manners and come to the old apartment. Billy hangs up. Tony, for some reason, took a liking to me. He apologized for the slap, gave me cigarettes, and said he hoped that this would all work out. He constantly comments on the fact that I'm living like an animal since there's stuff all over the apartment, and asking if me and my old roomies watch betting sports. We never watched sports, never had cable. He asks if Billy's last name is something, which it isn't, then asks if Billy is from somewhere, that he isn't, and then asked if Billy is enrolled in a university, that he isn't. I inform Big Tony that I'm fairly confident he is in the wrong apartment. Just as I'm getting him to back off and believe that there might be more than one Billy living in an apartment building, there was another knock at the door. Quote, "If it's the cops or your parents, I'm the maintenance guy." My parents were coming to help me move out that afternoon. I open the door and it's Henry, another one of my old roommates. I inform him he's picked a bad time as he's already waltzing inside to get some things. Tony poses as my uncle for a few minutes before I intervene and tell Henry that this giant man is looking for Billy, who he believes owes him money. "Henry, do you guys gamble?" "Yeah, we gamble all the time." We play dice and cards a lot. I try explaining to Tony that we don't gamble on sports, but now we have to go through the whole gambit again. After another half hour of questions with Henry, Tony is back to believing he is in the wrong apartment. He calls his quote coworker to get a picture texted to him. It's not Billy. Okay. I tell Tony good luck and try to shoo him out of the apartment. No, it's never that easy. Tony wishes to take Henry and I out for coffee and donuts, his personal apology. I refuse. He won't have it. I'm in a Starbucks ordering donuts and coffee, which we consume in a nearby park, and listen to Tony's stories. Half an hour later, he says we can leave. At this point, it didn't seem like we were being kept though, and we head back. Naturally, no one believes us. We have a party in the old/pretty empty apartment. I stay at a friend's place in the building and wake up to knocks. Straight up nom flashbacks. It's my buddy Tom, who also lives in the building. He tells me someone's outside looking for me. Great. I get dressed and head outside to find Big Tony, who gives me a grocery bag filled with beer and cigarettes. Tom and a few other friends from the building come outside and we drink beer in styrofoam cups on the street whilst listening to Tony's stories. Everyone believes Henry and I, and if I'm ever in Tony's neighborhood, I should call him for dinner on him. TLDR, I got Big Lebowski'd. This happened a while ago when I was 6. I come from a third world country, and at the time, kidnappings were at an all-time high. We lived in a fairly nice neighborhood, no kidnappings there, no theft, great neighbors. We felt pretty safe, and therefore, my mom wasn't too worried. Our house was a gated residence, so we had a front yard and a backyard. I was out one morning in the front yard, playing with some toys while my mom was inside working or cooking or whatever. Someone knocked on the front gate. Me, being a dumb child, decided to go up and ask who it was. It was this fairly old man who asked for some water. Me, being the nice helping child, opened the door and was snatched immediately. I don't particularly remember what happened after that, but I woke up in a compound which I'm pretty sure was far from home. They hadn't done anything bad to me as far as I know, but they did try to feed me food that I didn't like. I was a picky child, and so all I ate was fruit. They had asked for ransom, which to this day I don't know how much it was. They just kept me in a room all day with duct tape on my mouth and ropes around my feet and hands. They did take the duct tape off to let me drink water or eat food. Anyways, a few days later, the police busted them and arrested them. They ended up in jail for life is what I was told. Not too long after that, my parents decided to move to a different country and now all is well. I still think about what might have gone wrong if they had sold me into child slavery or something, fairly common in my country. Life resumed after that. I'm as happy as a 20-year-old can be. Nothing really changed. I still don't know why I was kidnapped, maybe for ransom or whatever. In exactly a month, it'll be my 14th kidnapping anniversary. Not much like the other stories here, but my ex-boyfriend abducted me from my parents' home when I was 19, threw me in the trunk of his car and drove off. About 8 hours later, a lot happened in between, including me getting out of the trunk and into the back seat. The police spotted his car and engaged in a high-speed pursuit. He crashed into a tree, served about 4 years, and is out with the wife and 3 kids now. It didn't affect me as much as people expected it to, and I haven't really changed anything in my life because of it. It happened in the past, and that's how I view it. My mother kidnapped me. My parents were in the middle of an ugly divorce and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. Since she depended on my father for money, She assumed she would lose me in the custody battle. My mother is a dual Canadian and American citizen. My father is American. So one day when my dad was at work, she didn't send me to school and took me from USA to Canada. There was nothing my dad could do because we weren't in the USA. It was several months before my mom decided to do the quote, right thing and go back to the States. By that time, my dad has lawyered up so well, she basically lost all rights to parenting me. This happened when I was 6 to 7. My mother ended up moving back to Canada to be with her family. If I could go back, I would have begged my mom not to return to the States. What the courts didn't care to hear was that my dad was a quote, functioning alcoholic. He was abusive in every way. When my parents divorced, my mom couldn't afford to live in the USA. So I was raised by my abusive father for another decade until I moved out at 17. He had me too terrified to tell anyone, just like my mom was. I'm now 28 and trying to build positive relationships with both my parents now that I've forgiven both of them. TLDR, mom kidnapped me and took me from USA to Canada. Several months later, mom felt guilty and returned me to the USA. So back when I was around 7 or 8, my family went to visit our home country of Pakistan. Anytime someone from the USA comes and visits Pakistan, it's kind of a big deal depending on where you're going. Where we visited was a small village of maybe 200 or so people, and so word gets out fast that, quote, rich Americans are coming. This makes us targets, as people believe we come with pockets full of treasures and gold and money. Anyways, I'm with my cousin, who at the time was also 8, at a sketchy arcade place. Sketchy because it only had like 3 games, and it was located in the back of a beat-up mini-store. So I'm playing, and my cousin tells me it's time to go, but I was so into the game that I didn't want to go. He leaves, and I stayed. As I'm playing, these 2 guys come into the arcade room and just start watching me play and start giving me comments on how good I was. And when I responded back in English, not the native language of Punjabi, so they knew I was an American. Next thing I know, they grab me by the hands and tell me to come with them. All I remember is crying while they drag me in the daylight in front of other people to some house. Once at the location, an old lady, who I assume was their mother, was frantic and asking who I am and why I was crying and why I was there. The guys told her to pretty much shut up and threw me into a room. I remember just standing at the door of the room and banging and crying for what seemed like hours, and every now and then they would tell me to shut up or they would hurt me, but I kept crying and banging. After what seemed like many hours, the woman/mom opened the door and told me to run home. I booked it so fast out of there, but I had no clue where I was. I just ran, and whenever I would see a kid or a woman, I would ask where the arcade was because I knew how to get home from there. Pakistan is notorious for what they do to little kids, especially young boys. Young boys are used for trafficking, and so, reflecting back on this incident, I would say I was one lucky kid, because God knows where I would be today. I met a man online who was around my parents' age. He pelted me with compliments and told me how pretty I was and everything a teenage girl wants to hear. I met him in secret every other weekend for 3 months. I would tell my parents I was staying at a friend's house, and then he and I would get a hotel room for the weekend. He started getting really controlling, bordering on physically abusive, so after a particularly harsh fight, I told him I didn't want to see him anymore. A few months later, he showed up at my job as I was leaving and told me he wanted me to come to his house, 2 hours away, so we could talk about stuff. I told him I had nothing to say to him and tried to leave. He told me he had recorded us in bed, and if that I didn't go with him, he would make sure my parents, my siblings, and my boss got a copy of it. That we were just going to talk so he could explain why he acted the way he had. I was terrified of my parents finding out that I'd been lying and sleeping with a guy their age, so I went with him. He made me drive his car there, probably because we had to go through a toll booth with a camera and it would look less against my will if I was the one driving. We got to his house and he immediately turned violent. He shoved me into his room and locked the door. He ended up keeping me there for a week. During that time, he pretended to be my father and called in to work for me. He made me sign on to all of my accounts online, email, AIM, MySpace. He had a keylogger set up on his computer, so now he had all of my passwords. He took my phone the moment we got to his house. He wrote a quote, script, and had me call nearly everyone in my phone and tell them that I didn't want to be friends with them anymore and never to contact me again. One day, he took me for a drive to this park bordering a river and told me that that was where he was going to bury me. That night, I started actively fighting back. Prior to that, I thought he was just going to let me go eventually. I kicked him in the testicles and hit him in the face, but that only made him mad, and he shoved me on the bed and knelt on my back with my hands behind my back while screaming at me and whacking me in the side of the head. He was so ticked off that night that he used my phone and called my dad around 6 in the morning and left him a voicemail saying, "You don't know where your daughter really is or what she's been up to, and you never will." My dad called my phone probably 20 to 30 times. The guy eventually was afraid he'd tell the police, so he had me answer and told me to tell my dad it was all a joke. He sat pretty much on top of me and told me if he caught me trying to tell him where I was, he would kill me. I told my dad my friends and I had been drinking and it was one of my friends' idea of a prank. When I was little, I had this friend who I would play with, but she always wanted me to spend the night and would pressure me into calling and asking my parents. My dad came up with a trick where he would ask me, "Are you going to watch wrestling tonight?" And if I said yes, it meant I wanted to stay. If I said no, it meant I wanted him to say I could not stay. At the end of our phone call, for the first time in probably 10 years, he asked, "Are you going to watch wrestling tonight?" And I said no. When we hung up, he called the police and called all of my friends that he could get a hold of. He eventually called the one friend who I had told about this guy, and he had all of his info, name, phone number, everything. Within 24 hours, I was safe at home, confessed everything to everyone, got a bunch of phone calls from friends who were confused and worried, and everything worked out. I never ever go anywhere without multiple people knowing where I'll be and who I'm with. I carry pepper spray and a self-defense weapon, and I never met another person online. I'm 31 now, and it's still something I think about more often than I like to. I was a victim of parental kidnapping as a child. It was terrifying because I knew the situation was wrong and I shouldn't have been with my mother, but even when I could put together words to say that, I was scolded because, no, that's your mother. Your mother can't kidnap you. It was one of many events that made me lose all faith in, quote, authority figures. Since it happened when I was young, I don't do anything different in my life as an adult, but I do get very annoyed when people complain about having to sign out their kid from daycare and facing any sort of hurdles when taking their kid out of school or daycare early. Familial kidnapping is real and could be as traumatizing, if not more so, than stranger kidnapping. I was lucky that mom just wanted her sympathy ticket. I was forced to march in front of a BOV, an armored personnel carrier, with 20 other people who had been rounded up by the VRS, the Army of the Republika Srpska. We marched in camp with them for 2 weeks and were used as human shields around vehicles and outposts. About 4 of us were shot, and 3 of us had died before I was taken to give stitches to some sort of officer who had a gash in his leg, and I was able to negotiate my release and the release of one woman who I had marched with, who was also able to pay. I wouldn't say I do things differently now, but it drained the life out of me completely at the time. Any desire I had before that to stay and ride the war out was totally gone. To this day, I have an extremely derisive attitude towards war and resent those who start them. Used to go running in my area when I was in high school. I've had older men offer me rides and follow me around, driving really slow back and forth past me, giving me the creeper eyes. I've even had women try and offer me into their car. One guy in a crappy rusty red van followed me for 20 minutes. I remember the look in his eyes, leaning back into his car, shirtless. I remember crossing the road several times and he kept making U-turns. I eventually faked crossing the road at one point and jumped a brick wall into this guy's yard. A huge dog came running out to meet me. I chose the dog versus the guy. The dog ran up to me to attack and simply licked me. An old dude came outside and I told him about it. I helped him work on his old Jaguar for hours before I felt safe to run home. Also, I'm a guy, and this was when I was 16 to 17 years old. I can't imagine how a woman may feel. I just got my concealed weapons permit and I'm working on getting my GF hers. Screw creepers. I am Peter Moore, the longest held hostage in Iraq, kept captive for over 2.5 years. In April of 2007, I accepted a 3-month posting in Iraq working for the American IT consulting firm Bearing Point. I arrived in Baghdad on the 2nd of April 2007, where my main job was to develop spending reports from the computer system used within the Ministry of Finance. On the 29th of May 2007, around 100 Iraqi police officers from the Ministry of Interior entered the building and took away myself and 4 British guards. For 6 months, I was moved around, meeting up with the British guards. In December of 2007, I was separated from the other Britons and was held with 2 Americans. In June of 2007, I was transported back to Baghdad, and this was the last time I had contact with any of the other hostages. In May of 2009, the number 2 commander of the militia, Laith al-Khazali, was released from U.S. custody in exchange for the bodies of 2 of the British guards. In September, over 100 militia were released in exchange for the body of one of the guards. On the 30th of December 2009, 946 days, or 2 years, 7 months, and 1 day, after I was captured, I was released in exchange for the militia leader Qais al-Khazali. The last of the hostages' bodies were eventually handed over in early 2012. What's a sensation that you're unsure if other people experience? Sometimes when I'm breathing, as I often do, I get this sharp feeling in my chest that I can only describe as feeling like something gets caught in my chest. Usually a few painful, deep breaths will make it go away. I've told my doctors, and they say they've never heard of anything like that before. So, I'm not a doctor, but WebMD tells me that this is a telltale symptom of precordial catch syndrome, which is described as a sharp pain in the left side of your chest near your heart. It's not a serious condition, but it does feel like you're getting stabbed in the chest, which is, concerning. They typically get worse with breathing, and they occur within a small area, and the pain is not due to the heart. So if you think you're having a heart attack because your chest hurts, maybe it's just precordial catch syndrome. Sometimes I get the feeling in the back of my neck accompanied by a weird sound, kind of like the sound of bubbles and sparkling water. It doesn't really bother me since it lasts less than a second, but I wish I could describe what it actually sounds like. This thread is full of people having mysterious things finally explained to them, so I'm gonna give it a shot. My eyelashes hurt, specifically the follicles. It's the same kind of pain like when you have a loose tooth, and it actually does seem to happen when the eyelash is, quote, loose. Like, it's twisted around and pointing the wrong way. I have yet to meet anyone else who experiences this. My doctor's only suggestion was to start washing my eyes daily with baby shampoo, and it's reduced it substantially, but not completely. It sucks. It's more of a lack of sensation than anything else, I guess, but maybe every few months, I get this feeling that everything is hollow and far away, like anything I want to do is meaningless. Anything I hear people say sounds like an echo, and even the thoughts in my head sound emotionless and distant. It usually passes after 5 minutes, but I've stopped asking my friends whether they know that feeling because of the looks I get. Sounds like ennui to me. The state of feeling disinterested in one's surroundings, having nothing to do, or feeling that life is dull. Sometimes I get sudden weird feelings of, I absolutely cannot be here in this place. This place is wrong. It's this intense sensation/thought that happens randomly. No, there's no apparent danger, just a weird feeling or sensation of absolute, I can't be here, this is wrong, I can't be here, I need to not be here. I don't have intense social anxiety or fear of public places or anything like that. It's happened since I was little. Not sure what triggers it, and it goes away after a few minutes. I get panic attacks pretty often, and that sounds like it to me. It's not for the same reason, like I don't get anxious in public spaces. It's mostly an internal thing, but panic attacks can happen for any reason at any time. I don't know how to describe it other than to say I can flex something inside my ears and it creates this deep rumbling sound in my head. Edit, just woke up and holy heck, RIP inbox. I've been able to do this as long as I can remember. When I was a kid, I used to pretend that doing this activated my latent psychic abilities. I actually can do this too, and it turns out that there's a subreddit called r/earrumblers assemble. YouTube comments, if you're an ear rumbler, get in there and tell me all about it. I once saw a patient that had visual snow, which is a rare visual disorder where you see constant static/snow patterns over your normal vision. She spent most of her life thinking it was normal, but it didn't get in the way of her normal day-to-day life, which is a relief. Just to clarify, visual snow needs to be constant and will usually have other symptoms like visual trailing, association with migraines, or problems with night vision as I understand it. It can also affect one's quality of life, so if you just experience it at night, then it is likely just cone and rod, quote, noise, which is completely normal. If you see it only when looking at blue skies, etc., then that is called blue field entoptic phenomenon, which someone kindly posted below, and this can be associated with visual snow as well. If you believe you have visual snow, please see a doctor or optometrist and advise them that you think you may have a condition that is called visual snow. Just to add, my patient believed this to be normal as one of her family members also experienced it, and also believed it to be normal. But vision is a funny thing, and I guess we never really have discussions about what we see. Sometimes when I'm trying to sleep, my hands feel too large and my body feels all out of proportion. I can't get comfortable and I have to turn on the lights and look at my hands for a bit for it to go away. I know that sounds weird, but it's the only way I can describe it. Bizarre. Edit, I woke up this morning with my inbox exploding and I'm so glad that I'm not the only one here. and I love Pink Floyd, and I can't believe I didn't make the comfortably numb connection to Alice in Wonderland syndrome until now. I'm listening to it as I type this. When I hear someone in a public place describe their day or talk about something very specific to their life, I get an overwhelming sense of detachment from the world. The first thought that goes through my mind is, I'll never know anything about this person's life and they are sitting 3 feet away from me. And I zone out for a few seconds. I think sonder is the term for this. From the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. Noun. The realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own, populated with their own ambitions, friends, routines, worries, and inherited craziness. An epic story that continues invisibly around you like an anthill sprawling deep underground, with elaborate passageways to thousands of other lives that you'll never know existed, in which you might appear only once, as an extra sipping coffee in the background, as a blur of traffic passing on the highway, as a lighted window at dusk. My sister and I call it tickle thumb, but it's when you're laughing too much and try to pick something up or press something with your finger and thumb but have no strength. Of course, it makes us laugh harder and prolong the tickle thumb. Good luck trying to explain it to someone who doesn't know it though. I see unfathomably large objects sometimes when I close my eyes to go to sleep. They're random shapes, but usually a big sphere. They're so large it's overwhelming, but I've kind of learned to keep my eyes closed and let them appear instead of opening my eyes to make them disappear. Edit. Whoa. The first time I remember experiencing this was when I was a kid and sick with an ear infection. I was half awake and having nightmares. It still happens to me now. I'm 25, but I haven't found the quote trigger. Last time it happened, I was drunk. That everyone is always playing this game that they won't snap out of. Instead of just being themselves and saying what they feel, they act like they're in a play or in a chess game or something. And there's always this weird layer of separation between who they actually are and what they're allowing you to interface with. Even with people I feel close to, I've tried to have conversations about this and it still feels like they just refuse to snap out of it. I can't tell if other people are also acutely aware of a lack of candidness in everyone around them all the time, and they also get tired of it but play along because everyone else is, or if people are just really like that. I think a lot about what people are like when they're alone, and what exactly the differences are between that person and the person I get to interact with. It's strange to me that even with a really candid conversation about it, and with what seems like open acknowledgement of the phenomena by the person I'm talking to, they still don't feel truly present. There are only a few people I've ever met in my life who I actually felt were completely genuine without any facade. So I wonder if other people have noticed that, or if I'm just delusional. Hey, hope you're enjoying the video. Remember to drop a like and leave a comment, and subscribe to Am I the Genius and Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. Thanks for watching. Whenever I'm in a room where it's mostly dark, but there is some light, and I focus on whatever, ground, wall, nothing, my eyes start to darken the entire room until I basically have the view of my eyes closed, but my eyes are open. Edit. Okay, so I can see a lot of other people experience this. One thing though is the fact that the outline of objects glows really high at some point. Sometimes it's not even objects. My eyes would focus on whatever, and when it's dark, it starts, quote, glowing in phases, as in the ground gets really bright and then dims back down. Repeat. I get shooting pains on both sides of my lower jaw, under my ears, when I start eating anything sweet. The only other person I know who gets it is my dad, so it must be genetic. That could be a partial subluxation of the sublingual salivary gland and also the submandibular salivary gland that flex and swell when you juice your mouth way too quickly with saliva and spit for digestion. I assume it's when you've not had anything to eat for a while? I can't believe I read all that medical stuff on my first take. Sometimes when I'm lying down, I feel as though my whole body is swinging from side to side really quickly. When I'm tired, I can kind of control it, but no one ever knows what I'm talking about. Hey, I get this, and I actually got diagnosed. It might not be the exact same, but I have benign paroxysmal positional vertigo. It's basically vertigo induced from lying in a certain position. For some people, it could be very intense. It actually stops me from sleeping sometimes. Usually I can stop it by focusing really hard or by opening my eyes and looking at something. Mine is caused by crystals that developed in the balance part of my ear. You have this fluid, and basically this tells your brain how your body is oriented. That's why if you spin around a lot, you get dizzy. So these crystals can become dislodged and start swirling around, causing your brain to think you're spinning. If people are struggling with this, there's a specific set of movements you can do that is supposed to stop it. It happens pretty rarely, but I'll be laying down somewhere, and then I start getting this feeling of combined sleepiness/warmth that seems to make everything seem better and lets me appreciate the smaller things, like how soft the thing I'm laying on is, or how the sun is peeking through the window, or how nice it is to just exist. It doesn't last very long, and it only happens when I haven't been doing or thinking about stressful things in a while. Edit, it isn't just happiness. It's like advanced happiness. I don't know, it's hard to describe now. About once a month, I get this really weird mental feeling. It's really hard to explain, but I guess it's almost as if everything has become too real? Like life before was a video game I was playing or in, and now that game is real, coupled with not feeling emotions like I think I should, and I worry sometimes. I have that too. Sometimes I'm doing some light chore, cleaning a table, brushing teeth, taking a quick shower, etc., and I, quote, snap awake for a brief moment, especially if I'm looking at a mirror. It's bizarre. It's like turning off autopilot. This is me. I'm alive. I breathe and eat. Someone birthed me. I've changed lives with my very existence. I have a body that responds to my actions to the point where I don't even notice it. People I've known have died of natural causes, among those lines. Then I just forget about it. It's happened less than a dozen times in my life. Sounds like depersonalization, derealization. I have it too. It's scary. I regularly feel like I'm just faking my way through life, that all my supposed job skills aren't really there, and I've just been lucky that I haven't been caught out yet. I'm fairly sure this isn't true, but I can't help but feel it. That's what we call imposter syndrome, baby. As a creative, I feel this. It really can feel like you're just faking your way through everything, making videos, drawing, anything like that, and thinking that it's just not good enough. Obviously, it's not true, as people will gladly tell you that the things you're making are great, and there is genuine work and technique being put in. But it feels like it's for nothing. It's always that strive for perfection. I physically feel pain whenever I hear silverware being moved around and clinking together. Like, I'd literally prefer to leave the room than hear that. Nothing else makes me feel this way, but it makes me be careful when I or anyone around me unloads or loads a dishwasher. Sounds like misophonia to me. By concentrating on the area just behind my forehead, I can get a wave of sensation pulsating from that spot backwards through my head and to the base of my neck. The longer I concentrate, the more intense it can get. I know one other person who has described the same thing. I'd love to hear of others with this and if they have explored it much. Also, if I shine really bright lights straight onto my closed eyelids, I feel a little bit of inexplicable joy and clarity. Edit, not ear rumble/tensor tympani. I have no auditory sensations with it, and the sensation emanates particularly from my forehead. Pretty sure not ASMR, based on descriptions of it and the fact that there is nothing else that causes the sensation to occur for me. Also not free zone, because, well, I can do that voluntary too, and I know the difference. That falling feeling you get sometimes when you're laying in bed, then you flail around a little bit trying to stop yourself. Called a hypnic jerk. As I understand it, it happens when your body is falling asleep but your mind is still awake, and the feeling of falling unconscious triggers a flight or fight response. When I see a bus pass or when I'm on a train and get to my station, I always think about getting on that bus or staying on the train and seeing how far I can go. Just not tell anyone, not answer the phone, not show up to work, and keep going. Sometimes, relatively rarely, I will go into the third person for just a moment. I will see myself doing whatever I'm doing for no more than a second as if I was playing a video game. I know it's not 100% synced up though because I fell down the stairs the last time it happened. Oftentimes, if I've been laying down for a prolonged period of time, when I stand up really quickly, I'll feel a head rush and then go totally blind for around 5 seconds. I've had people relate with the head rush, but I have yet to find someone who has experienced the sudden blindness too. If I've been sitting around for a few days, I sometimes get an uncomfortable feeling in my muscles, leg muscles especially. There's a burning restlessness that drives me to get up off my butt and at least move around some. It doesn't matter how lazy I might prefer to be. My body says I've got to get up and move. I've never heard anyone else talk about the sensation, and I'd like to know what it's called. Restless leg syndrome. I get it when my body wants to go to bed, actually. Makes me get up off the couch and go to sleep. Maybe not a sensation so much, but for some reason, music can make me really emotional. For some reason, sometimes I'll be singing along to a song, even something funny like a parody, and I won't be able to get through it without choking up. If it was just really sad songs, I could understand, but like I said, it'll even happen with like Weird Al songs. I mean, thinking about how long it must have taken to get that take on Hardware Store where he's listing out all of the things that they have at the hardware store, I'd probably cry too. Some advertisements make me deeply sad, especially for irrelevant products like soaps or razors. It's all the meaningless promotions on the packaging to make the products seem more appealing. Maybe it's all the work I know was put into something that 99.9% of people are never going to read. I don't know. It's happened to me for as long as I can remember. This happens every so often with myself, but I feel like I'm just reliving my life through memories. It's like I'm telling someone the story of my life and I'm recounting all of it. It's a weird but interesting sensation. I think this is pretty common, but I haven't seen it mentioned yet. While driving, sometimes I'll have the urge to ram the car in front of me and/or swerve into oncoming traffic. It's not an urge to off myself, just an inexplicable craving of wanting to smash into something. I kind of equate this to the feeling of wanting to jump when near the edge of a steep cliff, which I know is a relatively common phenomenon. Yeah, this is called Call of the Void, or more commonly, intrusive thoughts. Which, by the way, small rant, I never liked how people said that they let their intrusive thoughts win when it comes to something as mundane as like sticking a hot dog in between two slices of bread instead of a bun. No, intrusive thoughts are about stabbing your mom with a knife while you're preparing dinner together, or something akin to that. It's intrusive because it's unwarranted and can make you feel like an awful person just for thinking it. But they're not always based on some Freudian desire to go goblin mode. They're just your brain thinking a little too much. It's really nothing to worry about. After a 24-hour alcohol bender, during the hangover, I'll hear pitches about a quarter step sharper than they really are. I have absolute pitch, and am now sober following a gnarly ride with alcohol. Of all the hangover systems I got, quote, the sharps were the most unsettling. Dehydration of your inner ear fluid would be my guess. Changes the shape of the ear canal until your body can replenish it, so everything would sound different. This has actually happened to me before. I don't have perfect pitch or absolute pitch or anything like that, but I think one time I was either sick or I just woke up and my ear was feeling pretty off. It's like whenever I would whistle, I would hear like multiple tones over each other. It's like I was harmonizing with myself, but in the worst way possible. And listening to music sucked because it was like the song sounded awful when I knew that it sounded alright before. Thankfully, it never happened to me again, but that was weird. It doesn't happen so much to me in adulthood, but I swear that when I was a kid, homesickness was a distinct, visceral, nearly physical emotion. For instance, say I was 6 and staying at my cousin's house for the weekend without my mom. There would be quiet moments, maybe near bedtime, where it wasn't just, I miss my mom, I wonder what she's doing. Rather, it would be a potent, melancholic ache where I was acutely aware that I was not at home and my mom wasn't there. And it would overcome me out of nowhere. I had no more control over it than if I suddenly felt chilly. I thought everyone experienced this, homesickness, as its own separate and extreme emotion, but I remember mentioning it to a friend in middle school, and she had no idea what I was talking about. What's really weird is that from time to time, I'll get the homesick pain feeling again in situations where it makes no sense. I will already be at home, my family will be there, etc. Then I drink water, and that fixes it. Go figure. This is your daily reminder to drink water today. Noticed it when I was a kid. Sometimes there are moments when I touch a rough or really dry surface and I get a cold shiver up my spine plus goosebumps. Some examples would be concrete, brick, or the cloth seats in my car. It is so odd because it doesn't happen all the time. Another example is if I've just finished washing my hands and they are really dry, maybe after using a crappy soap, and then I reach for something in my jean pocket. Nobody I mentioned it to seems to have experienced it before. ADHDer/fellow sensory issue haver here. I relate to this a lot, actually. I can't stand certain sensations. I have an anti-ASMR response whenever I hear whispers into really sensitive microphones. My eyes start watering, strangely enough. Some fabrics feel really bad to me, especially if it's anything woolly against my dry skin. It tends to feel prickly. I also can't stand using a manual toothbrush. It gives me bad tingles. I've used an electric one for several years now. But those are my quirks. If you've had any weird sensory experiences, what are yours? Let me know in the comments. I know I'm not the only person that experiences this, but I frequently have exploding head syndrome, usually after long periods of irregular sleep. I work rotating shifts. When I lay down to go to sleep, it feels like a huge rush of energy and a cacophony of voices from people who I recently talked to fills my entire head. It only lasts a few seconds, but it makes me feel extremely anxious and paranoid after. Sometimes I feel like I'm dissociating when it happens too. I'm not as freaked out by it now since I know what it is, but the first few times were really bad experiences. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.